seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I think we are live now, so thank you for everybody that's tuning in on KPTS and our Facebook and other social media channels. Getting the thumbs up that we're good. Okay, with that, we will call the meeting to order of Wednesday, March 1st of the Sedgwick County Board of County Commissioners meeting. Madam Clerk.
Invocation to be observed by a moment of silence. Please remain standing for the flag salute.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Roll call. Commissioner Lopez.
Present.
Commissioner Dennis.
Present.
Commissioner Beatty.
Present.
Commissioner Howe.
Present.
Chairman Weitzner.
Present. Next item, please.
County announcements.
County announcements. Good morning, Nicole. Welcome to the meeting.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. I am Nicole Gibbs of the Strategic Communications Department. I will have Cody Charvet come from Emergency Management to talk to you about Severe Weather Awareness Week. Cody?
Good morning,
Thank you,
Cody.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Is it at that
Sure.
time of year again?
It is. Severe Weather Preparedness Week kicks off this coming Sunday. It's our annual reminder that even though winter weather, we hope, is drawing to a close, now that means we have to be prepared for springtime storms. And of course, we already got a taste of that with what came through Sunday night. We use this opportunity each year in Emergency Management to remind folks of the basics of weather preparedness as well as disaster preparedness, and that's build a kit, make a plan, and stay informed. I could talk for a long time on each of those subjects, but I would instead just encourage folks to go to our website at sedgwickcounty.org on the Emergency Management page, and they'll get a lot more details on that. Weather permitting, our statewide tornado drill will be, there we go. Nope, that's not what we wanted. Let's try that again. Help me out. There we go. Weather permitting, our statewide severe weather tornado drill will be next Tuesday. It says today, but that's the social media graphic that will be used on Tuesday. So the statewide tornado drill Tuesday at 10 a.m. That means we will not test the sirens at noon on Monday as normal. It will be a Tuesday 10 a.m. test instead. Of course, sirens are just one of many methods or layers that people need to have to stay informed of critical weather information. We use a layered approach. We preach that in emergency management. And sirens are great, but sirens should be the last indicator that there's a problem, not the first. So one of the most important layers to have is something that will wake you up in the middle of the night. And your phone may do that, but we really encourage folks to get a NOAA weather radio. Remember, though, that it's not always about the tornado. Springtime storms have a lot of other threats that we need to be aware of, dangerous winds and large hail, for example. The squall line that came through Sunday night did minimal damage here in Sedgwick County, but there were other parts of the state that saw straight line wind damage equivalent to a low-end tornado. So they will do a damage path that's much broader than a narrow tornado path might be, and equivalent type of damage. And of course, large hailstones falling on you when you're unexpected, that's going to ruin your day real quick. Other threats that we are concerned about, not every thunderstorm is going to have hail and flooding and tornadoes, but every thunderstorm is going to have lightning. And you see the statistics up there every year. Lightning strikes 25 million times and kills 47 people on average. And if you're not killed, you can be severely injured or burned. So there's other threats beyond just a tornado. hail, the high wind, as I just mentioned. Also, the number one killer of all severe weather events is flooding. We've been telling people for years, turn around, don't drown, but every year people drive around barricades, drive right past warning signs into floodwaters, and they get swept away. Whoops, got a little ahead of myself there. Now, of course, this promotion used to be called Severe Weather Awareness Week, and if folks would like to increase their weather awareness, we do have our storm safety classes, which the schedule was supposed to come up behind there. All kinds of technical glitches today, sorry. There's our severe weather safety class schedule. You have a copy that was handed out to you before. I have some additional copies that I will leave on the table next to the door at the back of the room. We're really happy to be doing this open to the public again, first time since 2020 and COVID shut us down, that we've been able to invite the public to these classes. The main weather talk for Wichita will be next Wednesday, March 8th at 6:30 at Northwest High School Auditorium. It's free and open to the public. All the classes are free and open to the public. The one next Wednesday will be presented by the meteorologist from the Weather Service office here in town. They share that same presentation with me, and I take it around to most of the cities in Sedgwick County. And as I say, free and open to the public. So that's the long and short of it. If you have any questions for me,
Okay,
not,
Cody, thank you. I assume, Nicole, this is on our website. We can reference and I
It
see
is.
it's all over the county. You're doing these, so very good stuff.
there's
Thanks
at
for
least
the-
2 or 3 of them in everybody's jurisdiction. So I expect to see each of you at one of these talks. Okay.
Okay.
Just
All right.
kidding, of course.
Commissioner Lopez is already reporting that she's going to be there.
Yes, I have the list, and I'm going to be at everyone. No, I'm kidding. Thank you so much. Last year, we saw really the importance of being prepared, and because of that, we didn't lose any loss in the tornado that we had. So I just want to thank your team for, again, being prepared going into this season. And I also see Julie is in the audience, and real quick, just want to recognize her because she just won the Women Who Lead in Professional Services by the Wichita Business Journal. So I just wanted to make sure that we congratulate you and tell you just how incredible we think you and your department are and the work that you're doing. So thank you all for everything you're doing.
Now, I said that this Severe Weather Preparedness Week starts on Sunday, but we're actually kicking it off with a special celebration the day before that we've already told you about, but Nicole's going to fill in the rest of the folks about our big siren celebration on Saturday.
Thanks, Cody, and congratulations.
Thank you, Cody. I appreciate it. Don't forget, there will be a ribbon cutting event on Saturday, March 4th at 10 a.m. for the world's oldest Thunderbolt sirens still in service. This event will showcase one of the historic outdoor warning devices that is 70 years old. And this will be at Sedgwick County Fire Station 32, located in Park City. We hope to see you there. Friday, March 3rd is World Hearing Day. The 2023 campaign, hosted by the World Health Organization, or WHO, is focused on ear and hearing care for all. Let's make it a reality. The Sedgwick County Department on Aging is doing its part in this effort by helping adults 60 plus with cost of hearing aids. To learn more about this and the Department of Aging, visit sedgwickcounty.org/aging or by calling 855-200-2372. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, I don't see any questions. Nicole, thanks. You do a nice job of updating us in the community. Appreciate it. Next item, please.
Public agenda.
Commissioners, we did have an email or two that we were reviewed by the 5 o'clock deadline. Anybody got any comments or questions about the emails? If not, I'll make a motion to receive and file. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
I'd second that.
Oh, second.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis.
Aye.
Commissioner Beatty.
Aye.
Commissioner Howe.
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Aye. Okay, public agenda. We have a large number of people signed up to address us on the public agenda. A lot of them say it's related to one of the items, item C. Is anybody, so I assume they all want to wait and speak during that item, but is there anybody that signed up to address us under the public agenda that's not part of the, so I don't see anybody. Oh, sir? Yes, sir. Okay, all right. Well, we'll get there when we get there. All right. Okay, so we will close the public agenda. Next item, please.
Appointments. Item A, resolution nominating Tim Bonnell for a reappointment to the Wichita Airport Advisory Board.
Mr. Papoon?
Mr. Chairman, Mike Papoon, County Councilor. The first appointment today of two is a recommendation, a resolution creating a recommendation from Commissioner Dennis to nominate and reappoint Tim Bonnell to the Wichita Airport Advisory Board. This is a 12-member board. The county commission gets 5 recommendations for appointments to the city council, but it's ultimately up to the city council to make the appointment of Mr. Bonnell. The resolution's proper form. Ask that you approve the resolution.
Okay. Commissioner Dennis?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Tim Bonnell is in the audience today. I wanted to make sure we recognize him. He's a longtime friend of mine. He's also very active in the aircraft industry, and he's a pilot also on top of that. So he is very well qualified for this. When we had lunch on Monday, I thought we were going to swear him in today, but evidently we have to wait until the city council approves it. But this
Okay.
is my recommendation to approve Tim Bonnell to the Airport Advisory Board. If he would like to say anything after the nomination, since he's in the audience, we'll go ahead and give him that opportunity, I hope. But I make a motion that that I reappoint as my appointee Tim Bonnell to the Airport Advisory Board.
I'll second that. Any other comments? Being none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis.
Aye.
Commissioner Beatty.
Aye.
Commissioner Howe.
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Aye. Tim, you want to say anything? You're welcome to. Good morning and welcome to the meeting.
Thanks for the reappointment. I really appreciate it. I'm currently serving as the chairman of the Airport Authority Advisory Board and have been either a tenant, employee tenant, or user of the airports, both of them, since about 1971. So they're very important to me. They're very important to Wichita and Sedgwick County. Both the airports are experiencing good development now, new expansion and so forth. And as a part of what I do there, I've been serving on several committees for purchases, airport development, and also I was able to help interview the candidates for the recent new airport director. So things are going well there. The passenger activity is up over 90% of what it was in 2019. So things are looking good at the airports. And again, thank you for the appointment.
Thank you, and thanks. You did a nice job on hiring our new airport director.
He's a great one.
He's a good one, very
Yes, he
good.
is.
Yes, thank you, and
you.
congratulations again. I hope the city passes you to be on there.
Thank you, Tim. We appreciate it.
Okay. Next item, please.
Item B, resolution reappointing K.E. Drennan to the Sedgwick County Solid Waste Management Committee in the general public position number 5.
Mr. Papoon?
Mr. Chairman, Mike Papoon, again, County Councilor. This is the Solid Waste Management Committee. This group meets at least once yearly to set the waste management policies for the county, reviews the plan. One of the positions is just an at-large general public position appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. And this particular position is being recommended by our Environmental Resources Director, Susan Erlenwein. We've prepared the resolution to reappoint K. Drennan, and it's in proper form. Ask you approve the resolution.
Okay. Thank you for the recommendation by Susan, and I don't have any other comments. I will make a motion that we approve for the appointment of K. Drennan to this board.
Second.
So motion and a second. Any other comments? Being none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Lopez. Commissioner Dennis.
Aye.
Commissioner Beatty.
Aye.
Commissioner Howe.
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Aye. And as we close the appointment portion of our agenda, I just want to do another reminder to the public that we do have each commissioner has a series of board appointments, reappointments, expirations, resignations, moves out of town, this and that. So it's an ongoing effort by all of us to make sure we have all these boards full with appointments. So please, I'm encouraging the public to go to the website, and you can navigate to any and all the boards and see how they are and what they involve is. So just a public address announcement. So next item, please.
New business, item C, CON 2022-00049, conditional use request in the county for a 195-foot wireless communications facility on property zoned RR Rural Residential District located on the southeast corner of East 71st Street South and South 99th Street East.
Okay, and again, we're in a zoning case, and just for those of you that are here and maybe not been a part of these before, the commissioners will have to disclose if they've had any ex parte communications, and then we go to the presentation by the staff. We have maybe the applicant is able to address us as well, and questions back and forth to clarify between the commission and the staff and the applicant, and then we go to the official public comment, and that's when you'll be invited in the order that you signed up. And due to the large number of signups, we'll try to limit your address to about 3 minutes because we've all received a plethora of information, and we're just going to be encouraging everybody to address us and keep your point to maybe a new point that maybe we're not aware of, or you can readdress what's already been stated. But that's kind of how it goes. And when we close the public comment, then it comes back to the bench for more discussion or not, and then a vote. And that just shows you how the day goes on this. So I'll start by saying I have had ex parte communication via emails and dropped off messages, and I have not had any direct meetings with anybody other than the staff on this item, but I have had some ex parte communication. I'll just go down to Commissioner Lopez.
I too have had ex parte communications, emails, and documents that were dropped off, but I have an open mind going into this. Thank you.
And Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have also received ex parte contact. I received a large stack of information. I received numerous emails. I have not received any phone calls.
Okay, again, Commissioner Howell.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I too have received, I'm using the word extensive ex parte communication. Some of the people on the list to speak today, I've spoken with them personally, in person, and as well as emails and phone calls. And again, I think all of my ex parte communication was from the opponent's side of the equation today. Thank you, Chairman. Bear in mind, I will be neutral today until I hear the evidence presented at the hearing today. Thank you.
And Commissioner Beatty.
I too, Chairman, would like to disclose ex parte communication, various emails, also a packet dropped off by the applicant agent. I haven't engaged any conversations and determined to keep an open mind throughout this hearing.
So that is the ex parte disclosure, and we all have an open mind, just like the last zoning case we had. So, okay. So with that, staff.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Scott Wadle from the Planning Department.
Morning, Scott.
See if we'll go to this map here. So in this case, the applicant is requesting a conditional use to allow the placement of a 195-foot monopole tower on the subject site. And the subject site here is identified as a small square here on the graphic. The item is being presented today because the City of Derby has indicated that their Planning Commission recommended denial and because there are protests against the application. In terms of the request, again, the applicant's requesting a conditional use. The conditional use is required because the site is outside of the area authorized for administrative approval of wireless communication facilities, and because the current zoning of the site, which is rural residential, and you can see here on the map, would limit the height of the tower to 120 feet. If approved, the applicant would need to comply with the solid screening requirement per the zoning code. And it's important to note that for this case and cases like it, the state of Kansas prohibits consideration of 18 factors when considering an application for a communication structure. 5 of those factors are listed in the staff report that you received. About the property, well, the subject site is generally located on the south side of 71st Street and about 3/4 of a mile west of Greenwich Road. The site is located within the City of Derby urban area of influence and the Derby area of subdivision authority. In terms of context, the character of the surrounding area is predominantly large lots that are in use for residential or agricultural uses. Properties to the north, east, south, and west are zoned rural residential and developed with large lot single-family residential uses in agricultural production.
One parcel located to the northwest, you can see it here on the map, it's orange, is zoned MF18 multifamily residential district and developed with multiple single-family dwellings on one lot. In terms of review, on January 19th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing for this item. The MAPC recommended approval of the request unanimously, 12-0. Several members of the public spoke in opposition to this request with general concerns over the impact to property values, detrimental visual impacts to the surrounding area, possible health concerns, and construction of the tower in the floodplain. That same day, the City of Derby Planning Commission considered the application because this property, the site, is within the Derby area of influence. The City of Derby has indicated that their Planning Commission recommended denial of the request. The Citizen Advisory Board for District 5 does not consider planning applications. Several protests were filed against the application. They amounted to 46.23% of the protest area. This exceeds the 20% threshold established by the state, and therefore will require a supermajority vote to approve. In terms of the commission action, the Planning Commission, the recommended action is that you adopt the findings of the Planning Commission, approve the requested conditional use, authorize the chairman to sign the resolution, and authorize the resolution to be published. Again, this requires 4 out of 5 votes. Alternatives include overriding the MAPC recommendation, making alternative findings, and denying the application. This also requires 4 out of 5 votes in order to override the Planning Commission. Or, as always, you can return the case to the Planning Commission for additional consideration with a statement specifying the basis for that return. This would require a simple majority. And so with that, I'll take you through some of the maps and graphics for the case. The first one here, this shows the application site in red, and then the distances to these purple dots, which are residences in the area. So the rings, the orange is 500, blue is 1,000, green is 1,500 feet. Here's the zoning map. You heard that description earlier. This is from the comprehensive plan showing that it's in the urban area of influence for the City of Derby. Here's the site plan that was submitted as part of the application. Here's an illustration of the tower. And one note on this is you can see that the equipment is shown to be elevated off the ground. Here's the protest map. Again, it exceeds the 20% threshold. The areas, the ones in red, are protests that were received for properties within the protest area. Here's a closer-up map showing the protests. Here are photos from the site and the surrounding areas. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, are there any questions at this point from the commissioners? I know we've all been briefed before in staff meetings, so I don't see any. Is there a representative of the applicant here?
There is, yes, sir.
Would the applicant like to address the commission, please? Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you, and good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for your time this morning hearing our application. My name is Glenn Clockey, and my address is 5055 Highway N, St. Charles, Missouri. Our company name is Network Real Estate, LLC. We represent AT&T in their site acquisition matters, meaning we do the leasing and zoning. So I want to go over a couple things with this particular application. We are asking for approval on a 195-foot monopole. We have a lease area that is 70 foot by 70 foot, which we will fence in about 50 foot by 50 foot of that. The drawings currently show a chain link fence. That will be changed to, if we are approved, that will be changed to a solid type of Simtech fence that looks like brick or whatever the county would recommend. We will be entering this site off of 71st Street. We'll build a 12-foot access road to the site where it'll be gravel, and power and telco will run along that road. couple other things is that we do know that this location is located in a floodplain. As Scott mentioned, the equipment will be elevated high enough to keep it out of floodplain should there be a flood. It is very common for communication towers to be built in floodplains. It happens all the time. They do soils tests. They know exactly how much concrete needs to be put in the ground to hold that tower should there be a flood. We think right now that the elevation of the equipment should be about 4.5 to 5 feet to keep it out of the floodplain. Some other things that I do want to bring up is that I brought some things to put up on the screen, and I don't see the how I get to them. Oh, there we go. We also have brought along with us we did a real estate study by an appraiser. Can I do the one that says C4 case, the furthest one to the right? That one, thank you. We will have, his name is Andrew Baker. He will be up here to go over the real estate study showing that communication towers do not lower property values. He's used actual comps in the area. He's gone back 3 years to show it, so I will have him up here when I'm finished speaking. The first slide that I do want to show you is that back in 2021 of July, the city of Derby has approved another AT&T tower, excuse me, that is pretty much in the middle of town. It's right across from the Lowe's, if you guys are familiar with it. And I'm showing it, how it relates to the runway of the airport. That tower is constructed. It's been approved. It was approved by the FAA, and the city of Derby did approve that. Our application, if you look, is 3.20 miles to the southeast. So what AT&T is doing with the city of Derby, they've had some real challenges with their coverage over the years. This is their plan to really improve the coverage in the city of Derby. Our site, the site that our application is for the second tower. It will cover the east side of city of Derby along with part of Sedgwick County. This is pretty much their comprehensive plan to significantly improve their coverage in the city of Derby. She will also improve for your 911 services. It's going to improve your data speeds. They were getting a lot of complaints from customers. So the other thing that I want to mention is that our site that we're standing before you today is we are almost 4 miles away from the airport. We do have, I'm going to go to the next slide if you could show that. Go back to that one. I have two types of FAA. We went ahead and got our final FAA approval on this site. I have two that I've submitted to you. One is a temporary, which is for when the tower is being constructed. You have to get a temporary approval for the size of the crane that needs to be set, so because the crane is going to be taller than the tower. So that is, we got a notice of non-hazard, meaning the FAA has approved the construction of this tower. And then the second one, if you want to show that one, is the permanent. Can you show that one? Is the permanent, that's a temporary, but they're both in there. We have the permanent one, which is in there. That's for 195 feet, meaning this has been run through the FAA. They've done their study. They are the final authority of anything that's built in the air. This is a notice of no hazard, meaning that the tower is approved to be built. The other thing that I do want to mention is that AT&T has an agreement nationwide, which is called FirstNet. It's with first responders. This tower will be a FirstNet tower. So what that does is not only does it increase your 911 services, if there ever is a tornado, which you guys are used to out there, any kind of major catastrophe, towers at that point seem to get, they'll get capacitied up. You can't get a call through. What happens during those times is the first responders will get first access to that tower, meaning they will get through. They will always get through under the FirstNet program. AT&T is the only carrier that has that for the first responders, so this will be part of the FirstNet network. So what I want to do at this point is bring up Andrew. We have a slide showing his comps, and I want to bring him up and have him go through the comps that he found on tower sales in the area.
Good morning. My name is Andrew Baker, and I'm an appraiser with Valbridge Property Advisors in Kansas City. I'm a licensed real estate appraiser in Kansas, and I was hired by Glenn to do this study on this site, looking at other sales of residential properties in the Derby area and surrounding area. And so what do? This is a really, this is not rocket science. This is not something that's hard to understand. I use FTC data, which maps all the cell towers in a given area. And then I go to the Wichita MLS, which has a lot of data on, a sale. It'll have the listing price. It'll have the sale price. It'll have the days on market. And I look at those addresses to see if there have been any recent single-family home sales. And so that's what I did in this case. Once I identify a site, I go back about 3 years to see if there's been any sales in that area. Sometimes there is, sometimes there's not. And then we pull the sale and we analyze the sale history. And very importantly, we also interview the brokers who get feedback on properties they're listing about all kinds of things. And so in this case, we had 3 sales in the Derby area, sales 1, 2, and 3. That third sale's in South Wichita, but very close to the area. And the data is what it is. It shows what it shows. In this case, all 5 of the sales, sales 4 and 5 are in Eudora and Gardner, which Eudora is right outside Lawrence, and Gardner is right outside Kansas City. It's in South Johnson County. Again, we wanted to look at different communities too. I think that strengthens the report to show, it's not just this one area, but if we zoom out a little, we also get more data. Again, it shows on all 5 of these sales. I mean, if you just look at the sale price to list price ratio, they all sold very close to the sale price. They're all in the market for a very short period of time, less than 4 days in each case. Sale 1, just to briefly talk about, somebody hired a broker, and then during that process, they ended up negotiating the sale with the tenant. And so that's why there's not a sale price to list price ratio, because it was never formally offered on the market. But that sale price, I'm told, was not negotiated with any impact for the cell tower. So then we interviewed the brokers, and the 4 brokers we talked to all said there was no impact on the sale price. And finally, we conduct a paired sales analysis. So we look at the sale of the home that's adjacent to the cell tower, and another sale that's within that same neighborhood, where it's a nearly identical property that sells near the same time, to see, okay, this house, they look at a cell tower. This other house in the neighborhood that's a little bit further away, they don't see the cell tower. Is there a difference in price? And that analysis also showed no impact on price. So anyway, I completed the report last week. I think you guys have all received a copy of it. If you have any questions about it, I'm more than happy to answer. So.
Okay. Andrew, thank you for the information. Mr. Howell, Andrew, yep. Commissioner Howell has a question, so.
I can ask my questions when they're both done. I'll ask the applicants together my questions. That's okay, Mr. Chairman. I'll just wait a minute. Go ahead.
Glenn, go ahead if you want to finish up.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple more points. This site for AT&T is a site that they need to vastly improve the coverage for the city of Derby. This is a site that we've been working on for about 4 years. This is critical to their infrastructure, critical to coverage for the area, for the city of Derby and for Sedgwick County. And so we're just asking for approval of this communication tower. It will greatly improve coverage for the city of Derby and Sedgwick County. Go ahead with your question.
Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of quick questions. I see on your graphic that shows the distance to McConnell Air Force Base runway, but I don't see a graphic for Cook Airfield. Was there considerations made?
Yes. When we file for FAA, we send them the coordinates. We send them everything to where the tower is going to be, the height of the tower. That is all taken into consideration. The reason I'm showing that Air Force Base is that was brought up at the Debris meeting, that there were issues about planes flying to there. The FAA filing comes strictly from the FAA saying, okay, we've looked at your application, we've looked at the height, we're showing that it has no hazard. It's not just for that airport, it's for the entire area.
Yeah, I see a reference in there for Cook for the construction of the tower, but I don't see anything in there referencing Cook otherwise, other than the construction of the tower. In other words, the crane height and all that during
Gotcha.
construction. So I do
For
see
the
that in there.
For the final approval?
No, in your letter from the FAA, I do see that referenced in the letter from the FAA, but I don't see anything specific to long-term operations of having a tower that's 195 feet tall.
There's a second approval in there that is with this, it's in there. If you have a temporary one,
Yeah, I was looking at both of those. I have both letters in front of me.
and the permanent one doesn't, it's,
Not that I can see.
okay, well, let me look at that, because that's our final approval, but let me look at that, but
Again, I
that's
just-
something that we get.
Just for record, I just received this a few minutes ago, so I'm
I
reading
know,
this
and I
pretty
apologize,
quickly.
yeah,
but
I
missed it.
brought that yesterday.
So that might be something we might need to clarify in just a moment. Then I'll just say this, I had a staff briefing on this, and one of the questions is whether or not this will be elevated above the ground or not. And the paperwork I just received a minute ago and your comments, I'm not sure that they completely agreed. Do you think the base of this tower is going to be above the floodway ground, or is it going to be at the floodway?
The base of the tower will not, if it floods, the base of the tower will be part of the flood. The equipment will be above the flood. That's whenever we build a tower in the floodplain, the foundation of these towers are built that we build them in the floodplain all the time. They're underwater, but if it'll be underwater by a couple of feet, the equipment itself and all the electrical will be above the floodplain.
I see. And the solid wall that's going to go around that, is that going to create kind of a boat effect where the water's going to flow around it, but it will keep the area where the tower sits? Is that going to be dry?
The water will get under it. It's what they
Okay.
call a Simtet fence. There's no,
Okay.
they don't completely seal it off.
A couple of other quick questions. I read in the backup paperwork and from the FAA talks about it, lighting of this tower. It looks like it's referenced in that first letter, I'm sorry, the second letter, that the tower shall be lit. Is that something we can clarify, whether this will be a lighted tower?
We will. We follow whatever the FAA, we are bound to whatever the FAA requires.
What is that? Is it going to be lit? Is it going to have
The
lit lighting
FAA
or
is telling
not?
us to be lit. We'll have to light it, yes.
It will have to be lit. Okay,
Yes.
so that's a change from what I thought earlier. And let's see here. Do we know, because Cook does have a lot of ultralight aircraft that go out of Cook, and I think the other airfield, I forget now what it's named all of a sudden, but there's two airfields there. Hamilton, isn't that the other one? Anyway, ultralight aircraft, they take, in Hamilton, I think they take off on grass, and so ultralights that fly in this area, I don't know how high they fly. Is there any concern about obstruction, collision type, the tower being so tall, ultralights flying so low? How do they know they're not going to run into this tower?
If an ultralights take off out of a registered airport, or they take on off of?
I think there's a grass strip out that way still. I've not been out there for a long time.
Yeah, so if the FAA has authority over that, that is taken into consideration when we file for a tower. As
Yeah, I
far
think-
as,
yeah.
I guess an ultralight, if it, same thing if it would hit a high power line, they don't want anything to be hitting this tower, but,
I
it's
think this
just,
is what they call an uncontrolled field. So the FAA doesn't really,
Right.
they get on the radio and they talk to each other, but there's no actual ATC control of this grass strip field, I don't think. But anyway, it is a concern because it's not very far. And again, I'm not sure the distance, you say the distance to Cook. I think I've looked at this. It's a couple of miles to Cook, but that airstrip, I think it's much closer than that even. So I'm a little concerned about that. We can talk about that later, but and that tower by Lowe's, how high is that tower?
180 feet.
180?
180
Okay.
feet, and it's a monopole, just like
Is
this.
that a 5G tower?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Questions? Thank you, Chairman.
Commissioner Beatty?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. I'm trying to establish relative gain to the community. The closest tower was just referenced by Commissioner Howell, 63rd Street. Is AT&T's position that doesn't supply sufficient, it's not supplying sufficient service to the current population of Derby?
It is not. Oh, sure.
Sorry. Apologies, Kirk Sponsel, Assistant County Counselor. I just wanted to reference the 18 factors that the state has determined could and could not be considered for this application. A couple of the statutes in question, I guess, touch upon your question, Commissioner, so I would just caution. So first and foremost, I'm referring to Kansas Statute 66-2019F to ensure uniformity across the state with respect to consideration of every application. An authority shall not, and then they list the 18 elements. For element number 2, you are not allowed to require information concerning the specific need for wireless support structure, including if the service to be provided from the wireless support structure is to add additional wireless coverage or additional wireless capacity. And additionally, on number 1 of the same subsection, it indicates that you are not allowed to, amongst other limitations, evaluate an applicant's business decisions with respect to the applicant's design service, customer demand for service, or quality of the applicant's service to or from a particular area or site.
Thank you, Kurt. So, to be clear, I'm glad you jumped up because it sounds as if we're pretty limited. We can't discuss or render judgment based on the use of this tower, the need of this tower. We can't render a judgment based on safety concerns or health concerns, and that's by state statute?
That is correct. State statute has established the 18 factors as previously indicated by staff. The 2 I quoted did deal with the question of propriety or need potentially for the services being offered. But yes, among the 18 other factors, there are limitations on factors you may consider.
The zoning case is limited to the, okay,
Yes.
to be clear.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, any other questions?
And Kirk Sponsel, Assistant County Counselor again.
I have no other questions. It's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sirs, thank you for the information. I don't,
Thank you very much.
okay, I don't see any, okay. Excuse me. Oh, Commissioner Lopez, sorry.
Sorry, I have a question for Andrew.
Andrew,
On
sorry,
the-
one more question.
On the homes that you've listed, sorry, I have so many papers in front of me, I don't even know where it's at now. But the homes that you listed, are those similar to what we're looking at now? So like rural residential, are the towers the same height as the ones that we're looking at or in the proposal today? Are they close to it? Because I know there's homes that are in that 1,500 square feet. So I'm just curious, what are the similarities in what you looked at versus what we're looking at today?
Sure. So to answer your question, each of the homes we looked at would have been much more impacted by a cell tower. They would have been within a couple hundred feet of a cell tower. The homes that are closest to Derby, as I understand it, are about 1,400 feet away. So that is about 4 football fields. Sale 1 is a rural residential sale. That is a farmhouse in South Derby that that sold $10,000 above the asking price. And we did interview that broker. I'm sorry, it's not sale 1. It is sale 2 or 3. Sale 2. So that is a rural residential sale. And then the other sales are, sale 1 is in the middle of Derby. Sale 2 is in South Wichita. And then sale 3 and 4 are in more suburban locations near Kansas City. So
Are they the same height tower-wise as what we're looking at now?
yeah. Well, I'll have to go back and see the pictures showing the impacts of the tower are throughout the report, and information on the cell tower height is throughout the report. I will say that if you look on this picture I have that shows up, you can see that the cell tower towering over the surrounding home. But I don't have. I'd have to go through and tell you the cell tower height for each of them. But they are cell towers. So.
Okay, thank you. And then I just had one more question about the fence that you had mentioned. Is that listed anywhere that it would be upgraded to something more than?
It will be. We'll have the drawings changed before, if we get approval, it'll be changed. It'll be called, what it's called is Simtex fencing. It's the PVC type fencing, and it can look you can look like brick, it can look like stone, and whatever color the county would prefer, we can make it.
So if we want to make that a part of this, does that now need to go back as a protective overlay? Then, is that something that we're going to have to send back anyway if we want to include that?
Kirk Sponsel, Assistant County Counselor. So there's actually two aspects to your question. The first would be if you want to make any determinations in regards to barriers, aesthetics, things of that nature, you could do that today. If you were to approve this item, it would be approving the item with the amended condition, and you would add conditions that you preferred. Now, with that said, I would also bring us back to the state statute, and I would just indicate that you are not allowed to impose any unreasonable requirements or obligations regarding the presentation, appearance, or function of the wireless facilities and equipment, including but not limited to those relating to any types of materials used and relating to arranging, screening, or landscaping of facilities. So any limitations you would have to do would have to be considered reasonable under this. So
How do we define reasonable? Sorry to put you on the spot. I know this is not.
Can I interject? I was familiar with some of this, and I think in, excuse me, in Oregon, they want to put tree things on the base of the cell tower to make it look like a tree and things like that. So there's some crazy ideas around the country that I think the state statute tried to limit on what you could make a cell tower look like. I'm not an attorney, but
I appreciate that. I think that the best approach to what a reasonable additional condition related to aesthetics essentially would be is to make it reasonable, we would have to refer to one of the golden factors that you're concerned about, and then discuss how this would address the golden factor that you're concerned about, how it would mitigate it or something along those regards.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other questions, so thanks again for the presentation, the information.
Thank you for your time.
You may be called back up again and after this. Okay, so we will now enter into the public comment on this item. Again, the clerk here at the front, she has a timer, so she will give you like a 30-second warning, and then she'll show you a stop or whatever. So would go in order unless there's somebody that represents the whole group that wants to go first. Yes, sir, you can come up and address us. Sir, it's
There's not everyone, I don't think, is going to speak for 5 minutes, sir, so perhaps that's what they got.
okay, if it's the will of the commission, if you have one or two that could speak for the 5 minutes and then the rest, try to keep it. What we try to avoid is, I don't like this because of this, and then 8 people in a row say the same this. We get it. It's in writing, a lot of stuff. So if you're going to repeat a lot of stuff that we've been told, it's can verbalize, but then if you repeat exactly what the previous speaker said, so who wants to go first then and speak for 5 minutes? And then let us know when it's okay to say 3 minutes. Because we have over 15 people signed up, so 5 minutes times 15 would be over an hour. We'd be an hour and a half of listening about this, and we understand. We've been through zonings. We know. And this might be your first time addressing us, but I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so state your name and your address. You will have.
John Harper, and I'm here to shed light on why not to approve the AT&T's conditional use permit. AT&T's proposed facility, the location is zoned rural residence. Rural residential consists of only single-family homes on large lots. A nearly 20-story tower would be wholly egregious with the surrounding area and would loom over the beautiful, quiet neighborhood. Granting a conditional use to construct such a massive tower would not only violate the Wichita-Sedgwick County Unified Zoning Code and Community Investment Plan and the Wireless Communication Master Plan, it would also inflict upon neighboring homes and surrounding community the precise type of adverse impact the Unified Zoning Code, Community Investment Plan, and the Wireless Communication Master Plan were explicitly enacted to prevent. Note, the City of Derby does have an interest in this proposed cell tower in that the property is within Derby's urban area of influence. On January 19th of 2023, the proposed tower was denied by the Derby Planning Commission in a Planning Commission's meeting, just as it was in December of 2020 by both the Derby and Wichita Sedgwick County Planning Commissions. AT&T's application must be denied because AT&T has failed to establish that granting the application would be consistent with the Unified Zoning Code's applicable requirements. Granting this application would violate both the Unified Zoning Code and its legislative intent. Granting this application would violate the established golden factors principle. AT&T's application has failed to establish that the proposed facility is actually necessary for the provisions of personal wireless service within Sedgwick County, and that it is necessary for the facility to be built at the proposed site. The irresponsible placement of this proposed tower and facility would inflict upon the neighboring homes and community the precise type of adverse impacts which the zoning regulations were enacted to prevent. Granting this conditional use would violate both the requirements under the zoning ordinance and the legislative intent upon which those requirements were enacted. The Unified Zoning Code set forth the purpose to preserve and improve the public health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of Wichita and Sedgwick County, and to implement the comprehensive plan of the City of Wichita and Sedgwick County. The Unified Zoning Code's purpose in implementing the regulation aspects of the comprehensive plan's goals are to enhance the quality of life of Wichita and Sedgwick County through the provisions and proper maintenance of open space and natural resources, and to protect and preserve the human-made natural elements which support human habitation, add to the community's quality of life, and to create a unique living environment. Further, the comprehensive plan sets forth core community values that define the community. These core community values collectively provide the content to which the plan guiding policy principles will be accomplished. Among these core community values are vibrant neighborhoods where people care about their neighbors, value the condition of property, and take pride in the quality of place where they live. Clearly, the Unified Zoning Code, as well as the Community Investment Plan, envision a community where quality of life is a primary goal. In order to maintain the quality of life for homeowners adjacent to or near a proposed tower site, AT&T's application must be denied. Their quality of life will suffer irreparably should a nearly 200-foot tower be constructed near their homes. Construction of AT&T's proposed cell tower would violate the Wireless Communications Master Plan adopted in January of 19. The Wireless Communication Master Plan outlines location, siting, and design guidelines for new wireless facilities. In general, tall wireless communication facilities should be limited to heavy commercial and industrial areas and should decrease in height as the intensity of development decreases, with the shortest facility being located in residential areas. Additionally, facilities should be located and designed in a manner where minimizing visual obtrusiveness and negative aesthetics impact on surrounding properties. This language is clear that a nearly 200-foot cell tower, nearly the size of a 20-story building, does not belong in this proposed residential neighborhood. The size of the tower alone indicates it should be in a heavy commercial or industrial area. In addition, there is no design.
Mr. Harper, your 5 minutes is up, but can you wrap it? Okay,
In addition, there is no design or disguise that could camouflage a tower of this size to minimize visual obtrusiveness and negative aesthetic impacts on the surrounding properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Any questions from the commission? I don't see any. So next speaker, is there another prepared for 5 minutes?
I'm prepared. I can go under 5 minutes.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Hello, everybody.
State your name and address, please.
My name's Gustavo Torres, 7521 South 103rd Street East, Derby, Kansas.
Okay, I see you on here, signed up. Okay,
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
You bet.
Awesome. Also want to mention I'm a happy AT&T customer with great service. Harry. Dear Sedgwick County Board of Commissioners, I love living in the country. It has always been a dream of mine. I moved to Derby from California 14 years ago. My wife and I began our journey living in her parents' basement. A short time later, we moved into our first apartment, and after living there 6 months, we bought our first home. We worked very hard and saved. As our family grew, we purchased our second home in Derby. In 2016, I took a second job and continued saving. At the end of the year, we started a senior care business, where we continued to work 2 jobs and manage our business. In 2019, we found ourselves in a position to buy our dream home. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. A beautiful custom home on 30 acres just outside of Derby. We enjoy every inch of our property, including the views, hiking trails, and pond. We have 4 dogs that love to have acreage to run around and play. However, having a cell phone tower so close by, it takes away from the beauty and country feel of our property. The back of our home faces northwest, and the 200-foot cell phone tower, 195-foot cell phone tower with the 4-foot added, 199, whatever you want to call it, will be in our view as we enjoy time in our backyard. And it will be the first thing we see as we look out our bedroom window in the morning. It will be in plain sight as we enjoy our trails, our walking trails, riding our ATVs, gardening, and raising our chickens. Not to mention it will block the view from our annual fireworks show on the 4th of July, putting a damper on our outdoor parties. We also rent our property as a venue, and the tower will take away from the country feel that makes it so special. I've also spent over $20,000 putting in a pond, hiking trail on our property, not to mention the cost of our home and acreage, which is some of the most expensive in the state. Our hope is to keep our country feel, and the cell phone tower will not fit and distract from the beauty and the country scenery. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Torres. Any other questions for him? I don't see any. Is there anybody else that had prepared to speak for 5 minutes? And so we can control the 5-minute speakers, and then we'll go to the 3 minutes. Okay. Please state your name and address.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. My name is Janine Harper. I live at 7010 South 99th Street. First of all, as far as the emergency calls, the telecommunications in November of last year put it together. If there's an emergency, you can call and you go right to the satellite. A tower the size of a 20-story building sitting next to a 6 to 8 foot huge concrete platform does not belong in my front yard or his backyard or her backyard or next to his house. This tower does not comply with the United Zoning Code or the Community Investment Plan. Article 1, General Provisions of the UZC states the purpose of the United Zoning Code is to preserve and improve the public health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens in the community and neighborhood. Construction of a 200-foot tower next to a huge 6 to 8 foot platform that will be holding the equipment also violates the Wireless Communication Master Plan. It outlines location, sitting, and design guidelines for new wireless facilities. Now, the intent of this is to balance the demand for the wireless service with the community's desire for an orderly and attractive environment. From the master plan, tall wireless communications facilities should be limited to heavy commercial and industrial areas and should be located and designed in a manner that minimizes visual obtrusiveness. Now, I don't know how you would go about designing anything that would make a 200-foot tower with multiple 100 antennas better. A 200-foot metal monstrosity next to a 6 to 8 huge concrete platform is not suitable to this residential neighborhood, where the tallest house is only 2 stories, not 20. There is no way to disguise or camouflage this tower. This would completely change the character of this residential neighborhood. The intent behind these provisions of the Wireless Communication Master Plan and the United Zone Code regulations is to promote smart planning of wireless infrastructure. AT&T has failed to offer the precise location, size, and extent of any geographical maps, in wireless service. This is important to local boards because without this probative evidence of the actual location of gaps and why this location is the best and the least intrusive means of remedying those gaps, it is incumbent upon the applicant to present circumstances which would justify a conditional use. It would be irresponsible and illogical to allow this industrial, obscenely tall tower to destroy so many lives. The FCC have recognized the need for hard data rather than the commonly submitted propagation maps, which can be easily manipulated to create over-exaggeration and need in significant gaps. In August of 2020, the FCC issued a final rule in which they found that requiring providers to submit detailed data about their propagation maps and maps will help verify the accuracy of such maps. The most accurate evidence used to establish the size and extent of gaps are dropped call records and raw drive test data. Drive test data consist of actual records of actual recorded strengths of signal. Drop call records are generated by a carrier's computer system. They are extremely accurate. With just a few keystrokes, any carrier can print out a precise record of all dropped calls in a geographic location. Now, this type of data does not lend itself to the type of manipulation that is almost uniformly found in the propagation maps. These maps are essentially rendered worthless as probative evidence. AT&T has substantial coverage in this area. As a matter of public record, AT&T maintains an internet website. As maintained by AT&T and operated, that database is linked to AT&T's website and serves as a data source for an interactive function, which enables users to access AT&T's own data to ascertain two things: the existence of AT&T's wireless coverage at any specific geographic location and the level or the quality of such coverage. AT&T's interactive website translates their actual coverage data to provide imagery where areas covered by AT&T services are in blue and areas with gaps in coverages are in white. You all have received a copy. Let's just look at it here. This is the proposed area for the tower. Now, as we can clearly see, it's all blue, every bit of it. Now, the stark contrast between the maps AT&T provides to potential customers to sell its service and the uncorroborated propagation maps submitted to this board to sell their proposed tower illustrates the ease in which data can be manipulated to achieve a particular objective. Now, there's no significant
Ms. Harper, your
gap in coverage.
5 minutes is up. Can you
I
wrap-
ask you to
can you
please
wrap up?
deny this
Okay.
is an
Thank you.
atrocity. On my way here today, it was the largest thing I saw when I left Derby to here, to the Epic Center.
Commissioner Dennis
Thank
has
you for your time.
a question.
Thank you. Actually, my question is for Kurt
Yes.
Sponsel. Are we able to
Questions for
consider
the
gap
attorney.
coverage as part of the
I'm sorry.
zoning
Are
decision?
you asking me or?
No.
Oh.
Ms. Harper, yeah, this is a question for the attorney.
Kirk Sponsel, Assistant County Counselor. I would refer back to the same subsection previously referred to in the Kansas statutes. That would be Section 2. You are not, an authority may not require proprietary, confidential, or business information to justify for the need for new wireless support structure, including propagation maps and telecommunications traffic studies. So you can't require that information. And additionally, I would also refer back to number 1, whereas you are not allowed to evaluate an applicant's business decisions with respect to the applicant's design service, customer demand for service, or quality of the applicant's service tour from a particular area or site. And once again, I am paraphrasing this. I'm picking out the portions of language that are relevant to this discussion. But in essence, they indicate you can't be analyzing the level of coverage.
Okay, thank you. And my next question is actually for Scott Wadle. I've heard 2 speakers now using their 5 minutes to say that this doesn't comply with our unified zoning code, our comprehensive plan, and our wireless master plan. And I'd like you to address those issues if you could. And you may need Kurt Sponsel to help with some of that.
Sure, yes, sir. So in the staff report and in the packet you received, I would refer back to the MAPC staff report, which goes over this in greater detail. So the first one is the Community Investments Plan. Community Investments Plan, and whether or not it's in conformance with that. In this area, this is an urban growth area for the city of Derby. So we look to the city of Derby for that one, but I would point out that this is identified as an urban growth area. The second part then is the wireless master plan. And while it is true that the wireless master plan does say that wireless communication facilities should be limited to heavy commercial and industrial areas and should decrease in height as the intensity of development decreases, with the shortest facilities being located in residential areas, the plan does provide does distinguish between areas where it recommends them and areas where it says it may be a good idea to put them, in essence. And for that process, it allows the conditional use process, which is what the applicant is pursuing in this instance. Also, when we looked at this as planning staff, the wireless master plan makes reference to the applicants are particularly encouraged to seek wooded areas for new facilities for compatible siting. And in this area, you'll notice that there are heavily wooded areas both to the east and to the west. Also, I would refer back to, in the reference to residential areas, how I think part of that comes down to interpretation. Do you define this as a residential area, or do you define this as a somewhat agrarian area? So that was it was a call that we made, and I think that, in support of it is a wooded area. It's not a dense residential area. And that's the findings that we came up with when we looked at the wireless plan.
Okay, thank you. And I very distinctly remember developing the wireless master plan a number of years ago before the state legislature passed the laws that was referenced by Kurt Sponsel. Our wireless master plan looked completely different than it does today. But the way that the law changed, the way that we have to cite and approve different wireless facilities has completely changed due to those laws.
And sir, one thing that I would also add too, and going back to the comprehensive plan, is that the comprehensive plan has a difficult job. It's got to balance, as do you, it's got to balance a variety of different factors, including quality of life and infrastructure. And there are expansive sections of the comprehensive plan that talk about the need for robust and high quality infrastructure as well. So, it's a balancing job, and I would just add that infrastructure is a part of the comprehensive plan.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. All right. Is there anybody else that had a 5-minute and then? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. I'm Kimberly Shern Harper at 9451 South Woodlawn Boulevard, Derby 67037. Golden factors require denial of AT&T application. The most important conditions of Golden: the zoning, uses, and character of the neighborhood, the suitability of the subject property for the uses to which it has been restricted, extent to which approval of the restrictions will detrimentally affect nearby property, conformance of the requested change to the adopted or recognized comprehensive plan, opposition or support of neighborhood residents. The neighborhood's rural residential character dictates the proposed tower application must be denied. The tower is wholly unsuitable to this community. The proposed site has wooded areas on only 3 sides, with trees standing approximately 80 feet tall, and 1 fully open site unscreened by any trees whatsoever. This nearly 200-foot proposed tower will loom high above the tree line by more than 100 feet and will be impossible to disguise. Removing the restriction against the proposed tower detrimentally affects all nearby homes, completely changing the rural neighborhood's character. Allowing this tower is incompatible to the community investments plan. The plan's intent and purpose is to preserve the quality of life in this community, and by extension, to maintain its character and unique environment. Opposition of the neighborhood residents is clear and unanimous. All nearby homeowners registered their opposition to this unsightly tower. These factors together make it clear the proposed tower does not meet the criteria of conditional use. AT&T's irresponsible placement of its proposed wireless facility will inflict substantial adverse impacts on the area's aesthetics and character. Its construction is not compatible with the general intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance, the community investments plan, and with the wireless communication master plan. It's not similar to the rural neighborhood's character. Various federal courts, including the United States Court of Appeals for the Second and 10th Circuits, have held that significant or unnecessary adverse aesthetic impacts are proper legal grounds for a local government to deny a zoning application. The municipality may consider a number of factors, including the height of the proposed tower, the proximity of the tower to residential structures, the nature of uses on adjacent and nearby properties, the surrounding topography, and the surrounding tree coverage and foliage. Courts, local and federal, have held that these are legitimate concerns for a locality. In Stout and Company, LLC versus City of Bel Air, Kansas, the court held that not only were neighbors' wishes a factor to be considered, but the residential character of the neighborhood, the existence of single-family homes, and the visibility of a 170-foot tower to homes were all legitimate factors for consideration in denying application for a cell tower. All were factors for evidence of negative visual impact. AT&T's proposed tower is nearly 200 feet. Nearby homeowners' detailed letters confirm there is substantial adverse aesthetic impacts from AT&T's irresponsible placement of their proposed wireless facilities inflicted upon nearby homes and are precious injurious impacts the Unified Zoning Code, the Community Investments Plan, and the Wireless Communication Master Plan were specifically enacted to prevent this. Accordingly, AT&T's cell tower application should be denied. Thank you. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions for Ms. Harper? I don't see any. Okay. Anybody else? We will go. Is this another one of the 5-minute ones? Or are we just going in order after this then?
Jim Inkelar, 7300 South 103rd Street East. Okay.
What was your name again, sir? Did you sign up? Did you sign up? What was your name again?
I'm the very first one on the list, I believe.
Oh.
Jim Inkelar.
Inkler. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you, sir.
A smooth surface would make it easier to write out there.
Okay, we'll get to work on that.
Anyway, I'm sure all of you are familiar with Fringe University and their clock tower that can be seen for miles from in every direction. You can see it easily from the downtown area, and that tower is only 158 feet tall. And we're looking at a tower that would be 200 feet tall. So I'm sure you can realize that that tower can be seen in all directions for a great distance. I would question if any of you live underneath a cell tower. I would also question if any of you would like to live underneath a cell tower. Another point I might make is that your attorney has told you that you cannot consider whether there is a need or no need for this tower. So that goes both directions. AT&T presented a need for this tower in their mind, but it goes both directions. You can't consider whether there is a need or no need for this tower. What you have to consider is how it affects your constituents. you can, as far as real estate values, you can twist and turn real estate values any direction you want. We all know that. Numbers and figures can be changed and read whatever every one out of them depending what our requirements are. I think you and everyone here knows that it will affect real estate values. It will affect the quality of our lives underneath that tower. We didn't just accidentally move where we're at. We didn't, I built my house 30 years ago after everything I owned being destroyed in the 1991 tornado. We hammered every nail, placed every 2x4, put down every shingle. It's very personal. And I know that if this was going in your neighborhood, you would not look forward to it either. I hope that you will stand up in the face of state legislature trying to cram rules and regulations down your throat, and that you will stand up and look for the rulings that are correct, and that you will do what is right for your constituents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Inkler. Any questions? I don't see any. Okay, so next up, first on the list was Wayne, PET something. Couldn't read it. Okay. So I think now we're into the, if it's okay with you all, we're into the 3-minute session.
I want to go last 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Okay. Mr. Wayne, if you want to sit down, we've got.
My name's Wayne Petrick. I'm at 7550 South 103rd Street East.
Can you speak into the mic?
Okay, here we go. Wayne Petrick, 7550 South 103rd Street East. That as a property owner, I'm qualified to submit the finding of fact relative to items 3 and 5, and that's of the MAPCD minutes that were published in the internet. So this aesthetic damage, the aesthetic damage caused by this tower is something Pam and I will notice every day. Pam and I bought our place in 2015 because it was a place for us to remember and live our farm roots and go back to childhood while maintaining friendships in Derby that go back 30 years. As such, we spend a lot of time outdoors doing all the things that farmers do, be it on a relatively small scale. These things include working fence, repairing machinery, tending hayfield, gardening, exercising our dog Rowdy, and enjoying the farm scenes along the way. Looking at this thing northwest from our property every day and driving by it every day will remind us that our farm roots and agrarian lifestyle has been compromised by structures 3 to 4 times taller than the trees. No amount of pacification screening will solve this. The presence of this antenna is not compatible with the surroundings already developed in the neighborhood. It's not accurate to claim that it is. There are no standards of compatibility. We asked what reasonable was a while ago. Now, standards of compatibility, there's none of that documented, at least that I can find. Thus, the determination of compatibility suddenly becomes subjective. Hardly the words we want to hear when the reasons to vote no are supposed to be supported by objective evidence. Reasons to deny this application. Excerpt minutes, page 4, item 1, does not support approval. Simply describes the neighborhood and then says the space is large enough. Item 2 does not support approval. Noting that single-family homes can still be built on the remaining area does not establish suitability, and besides, such construction is not allowed in a floodplain. Item 3 does not support approval. In fact, it admits that there may be negative visual effects. It does not detail what these negative effects are or provide the costs versus benefits analysis. The tower is inconsistent with comprehensive planning, which limits the location of these structures to heavy industrial or commercial. A few trees are not a substitute, and this argument is outside the intent of the guideline, which is to keep tall towers out of residential areas. Item 4 does not support approval. It just says it's used for farming. Item 5 does not support approval. There's no analysis to support these claims. Economic gain for the applicant does not automatically result in gain to public welfare. No supporting evidence is presented. It doesn't seem likely that a new cell tower will cause the public to suddenly become cheerleaders for wireless service. Also, it doesn't seem likely that the loss of economic opportunity to the applicant/landowner would outweigh the welfare of the many. Again, no analysis. If there is hardship, the applicant/landowner brought it upon themselves. Potential hardship of the applicant/landowner is not in itself a reason to approve the tower. The welfare of those opposed should not be compromised by the risk realized by the applicant/landowner. The applicant is still free to go elsewhere, and the landowner is still free to do something else. Business opportunities come and go all the time. There's no evidence this tower benefits the community. And so there is no evidence this tower is even necessary. So it's not a requirement. They can't say, they can't require this kind of data, but there's nothing that keeps them from looking at it if they've got it.
Sir, can you keep on your message?
I'm sorry.
Your time's.
And so item 6 does not support approval. This item states partial compliance and references a report. Said report was not published with the agenda item. Derby Comprehensive Plan shows a large area around the tower as a green belt. A solar tower meant for industrial area is totally out of character with green space and will degrade the quiet enjoyment of those who use it eventually. This tower is proposed in the floodplain. The purpose of the floodplain regulations is to manage the flood water. Such these regulations generally prohibit construction in designated areas. Putting the tower on equipment on stilts might keep it dry, but it doesn't going on. The road, however, will likely not be on stilts. So either the road will be elevated or the gravel will wash off every time the water comes up. Either way, adding fill in the floodplain will result. There should be zero unknowns around the subject of floodwater management at this point in this project. These are all legitimate reasons to deny this application. Speaking of which, be sure to read the memorandum in opposition document that you were provided. It was professionally prepared and submitted before the deadline by 45 members of the community. It provides thorough explanation of the legal basis to deny this application and is an easy read. I respectfully submit that you have a responsibility to know what it says. Finally, you have a responsibility to enforce the code and deny this application for the same reasons Con 2020-0033 was denied in 3rd of December 2020. Fundamentally, these reasons do not change simply by moving the tower 2,500 foot southeast. This thing died once, let it stay dead. Thank you.
Mr. Beatty.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your comments. Kurt, there's a lot of reference to the size of this tower, 195 feet. There's also a lot of reference to the state statutes that are really strictly limiting some of the considerations that we may have. Are we allowed to, do we have the capacity under state statute to consider the size of this and if a smaller tower is an option?
So there's Kirk Sponsel, Assistant County Counselor again. So there's a couple elements to this. First off, in reference to the height of the tower, there are a couple components within the statute, once again, that are potentially limiting. I would first point out to number 6, in which the commission is not allowed to impose any restrictions at or near civilian airports with respect to objects, navigable airspace height limitations, proximity to civilian airports, or markings, lightings on wireless structures or base stations that are greater than or in conflict with any restrictions required by the Federal Aviation Administration, except that this paragraph shall not be construed so as to impact any existing height restrictions adopted by an authority as of the effective date of this section on wireless support structures by an authority, on wireless support structures or base stations located at or near civilian airports. So essentially, in regards to the whole issue of it being close to an airport, if there were specific height restrictions prior to the enactment of this, they could arguably be considered. But for you to impose today additional height restrictions simply because it is close to an airport outside of our standard regulations that would be of concern and likely in violation of the statute. Additionally, there have been, like you said, mentions of the height of this. There's an additional restriction, and I'm just getting it here. Okay, that you cannot impose a greater setback or fall zone requirement for a wireless support structure than for other types of commercial structures of similar size. I would defer to Scott Wadle on this, but I believe part of the analysis in terms of the height restriction was in regards to the property line and potential fall zone.
Yeah, Kirk, I would just add that yes, we do take into account the distance to the nearest residential, so TF3 or more restrictive zoning property line, and that is accounted for in the wireless communications plan and the unified zoning code. And in this case, it is 200 feet away from the nearest property that's residential use. And that's referenced in the staff report on the first page of the staff report that you received. To the west of this site is zoned rural residential district. The applicant submitted a site plan indicating the tower is 200 feet away from the property line. Therefore, the proposed 195-foot tower meets the compatibility height standards, which are in the zoning code.
Okay. I have no more questions.
Commissioner Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Chris Labrum. The previous speaker discussed several times the floodplain and whether or not we could build this structure within this floodway that exists. So could you address that, please?
Yes, sir. So good morning, Commissioners. Chris Labrum, MABCD, Metro Area Building Construction Department, for the record. So the and this area being floodway means that it does have to present a zero rise. So before we would issue any building permits, that would have to be cleared with the state. So they would get a state floodplain development that would be required of us. Generally with these, that is not a problem since as the applicant discussed, the pillars are in the floodplain or in the floodway, but they are normally able to do that without creating additional rise to the flood, and then all of the equipment is elevated out of that.
Okay, so to clarify, the tower itself is built at ground level with a big pier underneath it.
That is correct.
It's not raised by any kind of a platform. It starts at ground level, and because it's just a tower, it can be in the water, correct?
Correct.
But the equipment does have to be raised up so that it's above the floodplain.
And that is also correct, Commissioner, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Okay, no other questions. Next up is Pam Pedrick.
Yes, I'm Pam Petrick, and I live at 7550 South 103rd Street East.
So I apologize for mispronouncing
Some of this is going to be a little bit repetitive because my neighbors have brought up some of these points, so I'll try to keep it really short. But we bought this property in 2015 with a substantial portion of our assets because of its remote country feel, while still being close to the Derby amenities and the friends we've made over the last 30 years in Derby. We've enjoyed the nature aspects and the distance between homes. And this being called an agricultural area is probably not that accurate. We have large lots for residences, and we have hay production on most of them. And I only know one person sitting here who's actively involved in farming, and so I'm not sure that this really qualifies as an ag area. Okay, every time I stand at my kitchen window, I'll be looking at this tower. Every time I try to entertain guests on my deck, we will all be towered over. In the 7 years we've lived at this location, I've had no significant issues with cell phone coverage. Don't let anyone tell you that 40-foot trees will block your view of a 200-foot tower. Derby is pretty much limited for its development to the north, to the west, and to the south, and so it's probably going to move east. And I can see that this would be an issue. the proposed location from 2 years ago was just moved just far enough that the city, that they didn't have to notify all the people that fought it last time. So if I might respectfully ask commissioners, would you vote for this if it was within 1,000 feet of your home? Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? I don't see any. Next speaker is Amy Torres.
Hello, good morning. I'm Amy Torres. My address is 7521 South 103rd Street East. My husband Gus brought up a lot of the, our history in Derby and getting to where we are at this home now. We've been there almost 2 years. One point I'd like to make is that as you go down the street here, less than a mile, 0.80 of a mile is my child's school. So, again, you'll be able to see this massive tower from the school and the parish where my children go. So that to me also, it's close enough to the city and the town to affect the view for many, many people every day of the week. Sunday at church, every day at school, all of the children that go to school there and go outside and play. And that's what, motivates me is our kids. And, thinking about what we were hoping is to, pass on a legacy of our home and our land and the beauty of this area. So I really urge you to reconsider this, please, and, take into consideration everybody's history that they've presented for you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Torres. Next speaker is Rhonda. I'm sorry.
I apologize, Kirk Swanson, Assistant County Councilor. I apologize for jumping in. This is a follow-up to Commissioner Beatty's previous question about consideration of height. I indicated what was in the statutes, but in analyzing your question from a different angle, in thinking about your question, to me, could also mean, can we consider height of this object in any capacity? And I would just like to clarify that there has been reference to height in terms of aesthetics, and there has been case law that aesthetics can be potentially considered by the commission. So I did just want to make that clear.
Okay. Next speaker is Rhonda Gooden.
I'd like to give my time to my husband. He signed up right after me.
Okay, that would be Michael Gooden. State your name and address.
I have a fear of dentistry, and I'd rather be in a root canal right now than here. My name is Mike Gooden. I live at 11501 East 75th Street South. My son just lives. My grandkids sleep right there, and they will for many years to come. I'm the fourth generation to farm there. My son's the fifth, and my grandchildren are the sixth generation to live there. I've seen all these people come. I've been there a long time. I'm 71 years old and lived here most of my life. So all these people here, I know most of them pretty well, and they're good people. I like them. Listen to them. We're a group of people here. We're we the people, not we the little people. Listen to us. I have a letter here from my son. He couldn't be here today. He's at work. He's a 19-year veteran of the Wichita Fire Department, protecting your lives and property. It basically says, I'm not going to read it, it says basically the same thing that the others have expressed. I don't know whether these are safe or not. I know we're not supposed to talk about that. The fact is, you don't know either. The government's never wrong. DDT, lead in paint. They say it's safe. Who knows? We won't know for 30 years. You have any questions? I'd be happy to answer any questions. This thing is ugly. There's better places to put it, not that far away. There's fewer houses, and it's higher. The reason it's got to be so high is because it's in a floodplain. Well, that's why it has to be so high. There's places to the north and west a little bit, there's hardly any houses, and it's a lot higher. The guy from AT&T, probably a real nice guy. I'm with Verizon, but one of his maps, he said that the existing tower there by Lowe's was pretty much in the center of town. Well, Jim, it's at the extreme north end of town, and you know it. I know it didn't get by you. He was misleading. And he did say this was primarily for the Derby residents. Well, then put it in Derby. I'd like to keep things simple. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Lopez?
Thank you. Just a really quick question. Do you know if we received that letter in email or anything? If you took the time to write it, if you would like, if we have not received it yet, if we want to make copies, we can
Have
get.
you got it? Have they got it?
Is it in there? Okay.
Seth
Okay,
Argan,
perfect. I just
and
wanted to make sure that if you took the time to write it,
he's
that
my
we were.
son. He's a great guy, but his penmanship is terrible.
Okay, we'll take that into consideration as we read that one, okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Mike Harper.
Mine's about 4 minutes and 15 seconds. I had one thing. On the application at the top, it says this tower is located in Wichita. So there was an error in the application. I'm here to talk about the undeniable negative aesthetic impact the tower will have on our property and the surrounding area. As a resident of this community, I value the beauty of our neighborhood and the visual appeal of the natural surroundings. If the proposed 20-story tall tower is built, every time I look out the picture windows of our home or go outside to enjoy the patio or our yard or our property, the tower will be looming over us. This thing will dominate the skyline. It will negatively impact the character of the surrounding area. The proposed tower's height and size will dwarf the surrounding homes. It will be 110 foot taller than the trees. It will be visible for many miles around, thus shattering the beautiful and unique landscape that has attracted my family and so many others to this area. This massive 200-foot tower should not come at the cost of the visual appeal and beauty of a residential neighborhood. The tower does not fit the character of the neighborhood. Installing the tower at this location will have significant adverse impact on property values, and it will also negatively affect the overall quality of life for all the residents in the surrounding area. For this reason, you should deny the conditional use request. Federal courts around the country, including the United States Court of Appeals, Second Circuit, and 10th Circuit, have held that significant or unnecessary adverse aesthetic impacts are proper legal grounds upon which a local government may design a zoning application. Seeking approval for a wireless television facility. See reference in the memorandum, page 7. In December 2020, Sedgwick County Planning Commission and Derby Planning Commission denied the cell tower requested on the southwest portion of the same Powell property. The reasons they used, the character of the surrounding area is a mix of different types of low-density residential and agricultural use. Property to the west is the city limits of Derby. 1,500 feet away is a subdivision. Single-family residential has single-family dwellings. It may negatively impact future development of the property and may provide negative visual impacts to nearby properties. The request exceeds the height guidelines for RR district by 115 feet. Now it's a 75 foot higher. Approval of the conditional use may have detrimental visual impacts on surrounding property, which is single-family residential. Relative gain to public health, safety, welfare compared to the loss in value and hardship imposed upon the applicant. This gain must be considered in light of possible negative visual impacts and impact of future development to the neighboring properties. The Wireless Communication Master Plan, adopted 2019, outlines guidelines for locating towers. Section 3, the planned tall wireless communication facilities should be limited to commercial industrial areas, we've said many times. The proposed tower is discouraged by the wireless communication plan as it is within urban growth area. All these reasons they used to deny the tower in December of 2020. That was 26 months ago. All of them are still valid today. The only difference, now there are more single-family dwellings in the area. The city of Derby has an interest in a proposed cell tower that the property is within their urban health growth area. On January 19th, 23, the proposed tower was on the Derby Planning Commission meeting agenda. A motion to recommend approval of the conditional use request for construction of the tower was defeated. Derby doesn't want it. In view of the foregoing, it's respectively submitted that AT&T's application for a special use permit be denied in its entirety. There's another subdivision getting ready to go in 1,500 feet to the northwest, in between the church and the Chase House. Another 105 homes. It's all coming this way. The tower doesn't fit the surrounding area. Please consider our comments. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Any questions? I don't see any. Thank you, sir. Next up is Andrew Baker. Oh, sorry, Andrew. Yeah, that's you. And then last, I can't read this name, at 55 Highway North Street. Oh, that's you? Okay. All right. All right, we don't have it. Yes, sir? Okay, do you want to, okay, are you going to share something that we haven't heard for the last hour? Because there's been a number of repetitions of statements. State your name and address, please. Please state your name and address.
My name's Dave Seltzer. I live on the corner of 99th and 71st, 7114 South 99th East. This site is a historical site. It's one of the very first places that was inhabited before Derby was even founded by the Swenson family. You can still find Indian head, all kinds of Indian stuff. The Indians lived on this property at one time. The Swensons lived on this property at one time. It's very historical. My intention has always been to give 80% of this property to the city of Derby as a wellness park. And with a tower that size, that close to that park, I don't see how that would fit the situation. And also, that property is the one that's zoned multifamily. It's the only orange in the area. All the buildings are historical. The apartments were put in a barn that was built in the early 1900s. The silos were built in the 1900s. I live in a tree house, and I live 50 feet up in the air. And so I'm going to be looking straight at that tower. I mean, it's outside my door. The tree house, the property along the creek is what I wanted to donate to Derby as a wellness park in my mother's name, Crystal, who was a huge realtor in Wichita, died in 2013. I just don't see how this tower will address that situation. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you for sharing your information and your history. Okay. Okay, ma'am, and this was the last speaker that nobody signed up. We are bending the rules here tremendously.
I appreciate it. My name is Jackie.
Name and address, and tell us what you need to share, please.
My name is Jackie Evington, 7114 South 99th Street East. I am the only renter that is here today, but I rent a house that Dave Seltzer owns, 100-some-odd-year-old farmhouse, big wraparound porch. We've got a community garden out front. When we go out in our yards, we're going to see a cell phone tower. It's going to be, we're no longer going to be looking for Dave's treehouse. We'll go to the cell phone tower and turn left. It's just not, that's not conducive to the area. And that was it. But I am the only renter, and I would not renew my lease if it goes in.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Okay. I don't see any other questions from the commission, so we will close the public comment session and bring the discussion back to the commission bench. Is there any follow-up questions that we have at this point? Commissioner Beatty.
Thank you, Chairman. Scott, there's been a lot of reference to the 2020 MAPC ruling. Can you give some detail of that, and can you let us know what has changed in this application
Sure.
compared to what came before?
So that was actually for a different site. It's owned by the same property owner, and I'll try and find a map here that shows it. So I don't know if you can see the cursor? Okay. So it's down in this area. So it's owned by the same property owner, but it's actually the property to the west and further to the south. This is High Park down in Derby. And that one, the context was different because it was closer in proximity to the large subdivision that you can see to the south and west of this one. Also, the proximity to the park. Also, there was quite a bit of infrastructure that's been put in for access to that park and that connects to that property where the application site was. So, although it's nearby, the specific location, I think, leads to additional complexities and things that were brought up during the staff report.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
Okay. Other questions for the attorney or the staff at this point? I don't see any. Okay, so we do have a, well, let's just make sure you want to, Scott, why don't you review the voting options like we've done before since there was the protest, just to make sure.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I don't know. Okay. Scott, maybe before that, I just want to, been a little confused. The applicant, you heard a lot. Out of fairness, did you want to comment on anything? And then, okay. You're going to.
Just a couple of things. The application in 2020 was on the same property. It's the type of tower was a what they call a self-support, which means it was a lattice tower. So it was a bigger tower. The base of the tower is like 35 feet across. It was a taller tower. It was a 235-foot application. We moved the tower further to the east to kind of get another buffer of trees, changed the tower to a monopole, and also lowered it to 195. So there would be more, we talked with the city of Derby and they thought that would be more palatable. So that's what we did.
Okay.
And that's it. Unless you have any questions?
Okay. No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Scott?
Yes, sir. So in terms of the actions available to the commission, so the recommended action, again, coming from the Planning Commission, is to adopt the findings of the Planning Commission, approve the requested conditional use, authorize the chairman to sign the resolution, and authorize the resolution to be published. That requires 4 or 5 votes in order to override both the protest petition and the recommendation for denial from Derby. In terms of alternatives, you can override the Planning Commission recommendation. You can make alternative findings and deny the application. That would require 4 out of 5 votes because it's an override of the Planning Commission. In a similar vein, you can also approve the application but require different conditions than what the Planning Commission is recommending to you. That requires an override of the Planning Commission, so hence would require 4 out of 5 votes as well. And then, as always, you've got the option to return the case to the Planning Commission for additional consideration with a statement specifying why you're returning it. That requires a simple majority or 3 out of 5.
Okay. Commissioner Howell?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I probably have a lot of questions, but let me just start with the one, and I'll stand for other comments. But you mentioned that Derby made a recommendation to deny. Actually, I read the minutes. They didn't actually pass out anything. They had a motion to approve, which failed, and then there was no subsequent motions. And so I view that as no action taken. Please clarify.
Yes, sir. Yes, I agree with that statement that they did not take any affirmative action to deny it. We received a letter from the city of Derby indicating that they had recommended denial. We have the Derby staff planner here today who can address any questions if you'd like to.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're clear. I don't, again, reading the minutes, I don't know how they developed a position of the city without having that recorded in the minutes of that meeting. So it's just a little confusing to me.
And an important point and distinction to make on this too is that per the zoning code, if it's in a growth area and the city with that growth area, their planning commission recommends denial, then it requires a supermajority of the commission in order to approve. However, a supermajority was already triggered because the protest petitions are above 20%.
And personally, I'm fine with that position of Derby. I'll explain my position here in just a few minutes, but I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure we're very accurate and clear in what we talk about today. Chairman, I'll stand for your other comments. Thank you.
And Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you. Well, Scott's there. And actually, Commissioner Howell asked one of my questions already because I wanted to make sure that I understood what Derby did, because as I read through the minutes from Derby, there was a motion to approve, and then I thought that the page missing or something because suddenly I had said denied. And so I had to start counting people that voted before I could even figure out what the city of Derby did. It was kind of a strange situation, but this was also heard by the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, and the vote on that was 12-0, correct?
Yes, sir.
And also our professional staff, which is another one of the golden rules, did review this, and the professional staff made a motion, or actually in their staff report recommended approval, correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And I've got the staff report in front of me. They did identify 6 areas of the golden rules on why that it should be approved, and a lot of those are definitely in accordance with the golden rules, and that's what we really have to take a look at between the statutes and the golden rules is what we have to judge when we're making a decision. I know that a lot of the homeowners in the audience addressed us today, and a lot of them addressed us on basically not in my backyard, which is not one of the golden rules. So I just want to make sure that they understand that we have really 2 things to look at, and that's the statutes and our golden rules. So that's all the comments I have at this time, and I will stand prepared for a motion later on. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other questions or comments. So with that, we're at the time where we make a motion. And as the chair, I'll make a motion to approve the zoning case for this as presented.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and a second. Commissioner Lopez.
I'd like to add something real quick before we vote on this. I've got to tell you that I appreciate all of you for coming in today and letting us hear where you're at on this, both the applicant and the neighbors of where this is going to go. And I'll tell you that I'm just personally frustrated with this case because as we're looking at the golden factors and just Commissioner Dennis, you mentioned that some of them were given the reason that it should pass because of them. But some of them, like the number 6, when it talks about health and environment and safety and all that, that's one that I really look at in these cases and one that we're not even allowed to consider. So I am frustrated with this case, not because of the applicant or because of any of you, but just because of the limitations that we're allowed to look at by state statute. So I wanted to let you know where I'm at with that. I would love to see what we can do maybe going forward and how we can be allowed to look at more, because how are we supposed to make a judgment on something if we can't even have all the information? I don't like making decisions if I don't have all the information on any case, but this one in particular seems hard when you can't look at the health and safety of what this could potentially be or not be. So that's just my comments on where I'm at with this case before we vote on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I'll echo that I was at the city of Wichita. I was on the city council when these rules were adopted at the state level, and there was a lot of frustration, but they were the rules that were adopted in the law, and it did impact many cell tower, including the little micro towers that were able to go kind of anywhere, even within right away, and so it's pretty difficult stuff, very difficult. So thank you. I'll just add it to your comment. So thank you, Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I ask for a little bit of time to work through my thoughts and comments, and I apologize for being long-winded, but I feel like I need to spend some time to explain some things. I appreciate the passion of the opponents. Again, I do my very best to be a property rights champion. I think that people have the right to use their property however they want. Property rights actually is a two-way street, and when someone uses their property that's detrimental to someone else's property, that's where we get involved, and that's really what this is all about. I appreciate the written comments of Wayne Petrick especially. And I think he made some good points, and let me kind of go through them briefly with my own thoughts here. He makes a comment that the use and character of the area is conducive to a tower because it's large enough. I don't think, again, that's not. I don't think that's what it talks about. It talks about use and character. It's a agricultural area. It's farming. It's rural life, and then fortunately, it is close to some homes. And I say close. If it was a quarter mile away from homes, it might be something different here. But it is, somewhere between 500 feet to 1,000 feet, and I am concerned about that distance. I wish it was further. But here's the thing. I'm not allowed to ask any questions about siting because the law says I can't. I would love to have a discussion with the applicant and find out some details as to why they don't do certain things, but I'm not allowed to ask those questions. My only option is to vote yes or vote no. Whether this is suitable for the area, again, I think it's very subjective. I don't know that I like subjective reasoning, but it is considered a future growth area for Derby. It would have single-family homes, and is this reasonable for that tower to be in the middle of future growth area of Derby? I don't know that it is. I have some concerns about that. Skipping down to number 5, although surprisingly they didn't come up during testimony today, but again, when I've talked to these folks before today, and again, looking at the material they submitted for the record today, it does mention concerns about the type of tower this is, being a 5G tower. I'm not going to get involved into the science of that because I think it's very hotly debated. I think there are some groups that say it's totally fine, other groups that say it's inconclusive. We have to do more study. Unfortunately, I can't prove a negative. And to the concern of the residents that live near this tower, I think they have a legitimate right not to be right next to a tower. And I wish it were further away from these residents. So again, it's impossible to prove it's not detrimental. Some of the studies say it's inconclusive and more studies should be done. Some of the studies say, because we can't correlate cancer to these towers, therefore it must be fine. I don't know if that's necessarily comforting. So I am concerned about number 5, the relative gain to the public health and safety and welfare of the people who live near this tower. That's number 5. Support and opposition. I have seen plenty of opposition. I know that's not going to stand on its own 2 feet, but it certainly is noteworthy. And recommendation of professional staff, even though our staff says they recommend it, I can't ignore what Derby did. Derby has clearly indicated they don't want this where it is for whatever reason. I don't think they articulated their reasons why. Unfortunately, they should have, but they did not. And so let me just state this. I agree with Commissioner Lopez. I am frustrated that the state has made it so that we cannot really speak to some of the things I think are reasonable concerns. We're not allowed to ask questions. We're not allowed to consider many things I think are considered reasonable. This law was passed in 2016. I left the legislature in 2014. This happened after that, and the reason it happened, I think, primarily is because there were difficulties of providers finding places to put towers that you could find, places to place them, and so they pushed the law so far in that direction. I think now you have reasonable concerns that can't really even be addressed. And so my question to staff would be this, maybe not right this minute, but I have a question for staff, and that is, it seems to me that if these 18 things are so exhaustive as to reasons why I can't consider a no, then let's just do this by right. Don't even bring it to the BOCC. Change the county law and make it by right, because that's what these 18 things mean to me. If I have a legitimate right to vote no, I think I've made a compelling point that I'm going to vote no, because I've got concerns. I think that the law needs to be tweaked back the other way a little bit. I don't know, I don't like where it's at. Someone used the word cram this law down our throat. I think that's how I feel. Let me just make one more point. Aesthetics is an issue, and this is a pretty big tower and a very, really scenic place. And so we wouldn't put this tower in the middle of the Flint Hills for a reason. There's places for towers. There are some towers out in the Flint Hills, but they are strategically located so that the views are not destroyed. So I have legit reasons to vote no. I can see some reasons to vote yes. I came into this meeting sitting on the fence. I don't like having to vote in a way that goes against MAPC. But I think the opponents made enough of a point with me today. I'm going to be voting no on this motion. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Beatty.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to give an explanation for my vote as well, because I appreciate all the thoughts and things that have been considered. I will be voting no, and I'll be voting no based upon rule number 1, the character of the neighborhood, rule number 8, opposition, 46% protest, and rule number 9, recommendation of staff. I understand that our staff, MAPC, and I also understand that the Planning Commission of Derby recommended approval, but I also see that Derby City Council voted to deny, and they didn't give a whole lot of information in it. And what I am frustrated about is I can't ask the questions because of state statute. I can't ask the questions that I need to be able to ask to get clarity in this issue. And because of that, I'll base my no vote on the considerations on the golden rules that I listed. Thank you, Chairman.
Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to remind the commission that last week they had 350 protest petitions. They swore that they believed in property rights. We had numerous people come to speak against a proposition, and yet the same people that are saying they're voting no today voted yes a week ago. I just want to clarify that because I think you're putting the commission in a position to receive a lawsuit from the 350 people that came before the commission last week. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Beatty.
Yeah, I appreciate the comment. I think it's very important to realize that as we move into the golden rules, that when the application last week was residential. This was a residential application for housing. We're short 50,000 housing units in our community. That was a residential application. This is not a residential application. This is something significantly different. And again, state statute is limiting the questions that I can ask, correct? They're limiting the questions that I can ask. I don't feel comfortable being able to have these conversations without the information I need to ask. So I will base my no vote on the golden rules that I have listed before and feel confident in that vote.
If I may, Kirk Sponsel, Assistant County Counselor, I just want to raise this because a statement has been made, I think, by a couple commissioners now in regards to Derby, and there was emphasis on the recommendation of professional staff as one of the golden factors. My understanding is also that maybe a representative from Derby is here, but based on the minutes, it was actually the recommendation of their staff to approve the conditional use. So those would be the professional staff you were referring to. Their recommendation was approval. Admittedly, their state planning commission recommended denial, but that's advisory only, and that's actually not a formal golden factor, what their determination was. I would also caution in terms of any vote against this based on the health, there are limitations within the state statute that restrict the ability to deny based off of environmental effects.
Thanks, Kirk, for clarifying that. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Chairman, for a chance to speak one more time. Again, I would agree with comments of Commissioner Beatty that last week's compelling property rights case was the fact that we're discussing residential homes in a residential area, surrounded by a residential area. That was very compelling. It did, in my personal opinion, it seemed to fit the character of the neighborhood very well. And So we can agree to disagree, but I think I made my case last week very solidly that that was I explained it at length. In fact, I received some difficult email after that, and after I talked to some folks and asked them to go back and watch the meeting, and I worked with them. One of them specifically actually just apologized. I just thought it was really interesting that when you understand all the rationale that went into that decision, it was a hard decision. I think we ended up at the right place. And so this one is drastically different. And I'd just like to point out one point that our counselor just referenced. In those 18 rules, the reasons why we're not allowed to vote no, it says in conformance with 47 U.S.C. 332C7B4, reject an application in whole or in part based on perceived or alleged environmental effects of radio frequency emissions or exposure. And one of my questions has been, and it continues to be, where does it say that that includes public health? To me, this is not defined. I don't know how you connect that specific statement with concerns about public health. I think the state law or the federal law that's referenced here should have some clarity added. If that's what they mean by that, then it needs to say that explicitly. It doesn't say that. So to me, the word environmental health could be, or environmental effects could be minnows and birds. I don't know. It could be all kinds of things, or cattle in the area, but it doesn't necessarily mean human health. And I don't know that I can jump to the fact and say, I have no concerns about public health. I think there are legit concerns out there that have not been answered. So enough said. Thank you.
Kirk Sponsor, Assistant County Counsel, would you prefer clarification on that environmental effects? I apologize. Yes, I looked into this further. It took a process, but basically, a lot of these federal laws emphasizing environmental effects and impacts appear to trace back to the National Environmental Policy Act that was originally adopted in 1969 and subsequently amended. Within that does have definitions. One of their definitions is for effects or impacts. Effects or impacts means changes to the human environment from the proposed action or alternatives that are reasonably foreseeable and include the following. And then it goes on from there. In terms of the definition of human environment, they define that as human environment means comprehensively the natural and physical environment and the relationship of present and future generations of Americans with that environment. So that's the definition, and that's the analysis we make. Now, going back to the original definition of effects or impacts, one of those listed items of what effects include, it is specifically listed as health, and that would be whether direct, indirect, or cumulative.
Yes, Commissioner Howell.
Okay, and I also need to make a clarification, something I said earlier. I did verify with the owner at Cook Airfield. They said there is a grass airstrip out there, but it's not Hamilton. I knew that. Hamilton Airstrip is now considered Hamilton Estates, which is a developed area, but there is still a grass airfield out there. But again, I just want to make sure that if anybody thinks I'm completely stupid on that, hopefully that clarifies that. All right. Back to your point, and I appreciate that. We talked briefly yesterday. The reference I received yesterday was from Canadian source. What is the source today?
Right. So, and that is correct. That was on the fly. I reviewed the statute. It didn't have a formal definition. Also, the federal code that was originally referenced didn't have the definition either. Now, this comes from the National Environmental Policy Act, 42 U.S.C. 4321.
Okay, so let me interpret what that means. If I have health concerns and there seems to be inconclusive concerns about the health effect of these towers, I have to ignore that based on what you just read. That's not a legit reason to reject a tower.
So there are health concerns. 2 points, two answers to your question. Yes, based off of the National Environmental Policy Act, it reads that health considerations are included in the environmental effects. And then as to the second point, we refer back to the Kansas statute that we've been discussing so heavily with the 18 elements. And that item is number 14, and it says, in conformance with 47 USC 332C7B4, you cannot reject an application in whole or in part based on perceived or alleged environmental effects of radio frequency emissions or exposure. Now, read in conjunction with the federal law that is included in that specific subsection, it means actual environmental effects perceived or alleged. So even if inconclusive, I believe that falls within those guidelines, those categories.
Okay, I didn't really state all my reasons for voting the way I did. I can continue. I think I've said enough. If somebody wants to know other reasons why, I can continue and add my reasons, but I just don't, I don't like the way this is being brought to us, and I can just tell you that I think there should be a better process to get to this point. I'm going to continue to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. And if any of my analysis that I have provided you just now does change any of your elements, I would request and recommend that you do indicate if it has changed certain factors you considered, whereas you don't view them as conclusory anymore, whereas you can still obviously refer back to the other factors that you listed.
Okay. I don't see other comments. In lieu of the motion that's pending, I would like to make a substitute motion that we send this item back to the Planning Commission to clarify a few of the items, including the state, clarify the state issues related to height and the ambiance. I'm using the word, anyway, just to aesthetics. So I'm going to make a substitute motion that we send this item back to Planning Commission to clarify the reasonableness of the state law application and the aesthetics of such.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other comments? Being none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Lopez?
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Beatty?
No.
Commissioner Howell?
No.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. So the motion, I think, passes 3-2. So it'll be sent back to the Planning Commission. Let's take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 11:25. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody, for the break. We are now back. Chairman Meitzner had to take a phone call, so he'll be back shortly. And Commissioner Lopez is online, and she's going to participate via WebEx for just a little bit. So with that, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item D, discussion of the federal legislative platform.
Very good. Tanya Cole.
Okay, good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Tanya Cole, Assistant County Manager. Before you, you should have a draft of the 2023 federal agenda. And so what I'm here to do today is to discuss this and hopefully finalize this federal legislative platform. Most of the work done on this was started with our federal lobbyist, Jim Davenport, with Thorn Run Partners. And we did have a discussion at our staff meeting on February 14th to talk about this. And I did work with county staff on this federal platform to get their input, as well as commissioners. So what I'd like to do is just go through this briefly so the public can hear what is on our federal platform. And of course, I'll stop if you have any questions or need to discuss anything. So first, I'd like to go through what we have for congressionally directed spending requests for Senator Moran, and he is the one that entertains these requests. So we have support funding for county bridge and road projects. First one being the ARC 95, so that's the Arkansas River Crossing and 95th Street project, and that's in District 2 and 5. The county is requesting $6.2 million for this project. This project will greatly enhance safety, connectivity, and community growth and improvements to the 95th Street corridor, a new exchange with I-35 KTA, and a new bridge crossing of the Arkansas River. So that's one project we have there. Second project is reconstruction of 151st Street West between 53rd Street North and Highway K96, and this is in District 3. So the county is requesting $4.72 million for this project. This project will replace an existing cold mix asphalt road at 151st Street West with a 2-lane industrial standard paved roadway with appropriate shoulders and improved roadside drainage ditches. Third project then is reconstruction of the south half mile of 135th Street West between 53rd Street and 61st Street North, and that's in District 3. The county is requesting $960,000 for this project, and this project will replace an existing rural gravel road at 135th Street West with a 2-lane industrial standard paved roadway with appropriate shoulders and improved roadside drainage ditches. And then our fourth project that we're asking for is to support funding for the county's Public Safety Preparedness Warehouse and EOC, or Emergency Operations Center. The county is requesting $2 million for this project, and with this project, we would plan to construct a new facility, providing several necessary features under one roof, which would include a FEMA-rated EOC, again, an Emergency Operations Center, an emergency management administrative offices, and a warehouse conducive to receive, distribute, and store emergency preparedness equipment. So those are the congressionally directed spending requests we would have for Senator Moran. Then our other items that we have on our platform would be the Northwest Wichita
Tanya, can you wait just a
Expressway.
second? Commissioner Dennis has a question.
Real quickly, have we looked at the cost of each of these based on the increase in construction cost over the last few years? Are we putting enough in each and every one of these categories?
So on the first three, I would I asked Lynn Packer on these, and I would assume that he has added those additional costs. But Lynn is here, and Lynn is shaking his head yes. So I would assume that he's added those costs in there.
Okay, what about the preparedness warehouse?
The preparedness, I know that we included that when we were looking at inflation costs, so I think that we would feel secure with that number that's in there.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Okay, are you okay with me moving on then? Okay. So Northwest Wichita Expressway, that's in District 3 and 4. So that is to support funding for the Northwest Wichita Expressway. This project entails the construction of new access-controlled highway from US 54 at the city of Goddard to K96 between Tyler Road and Ridge Road at the city of Mays, and it would extend the interstate level highway system at Mays to West Wichita and Goddard. Okay. And then our next project is the Amtrak extension. That is to support the extension of Amtrak service from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, into Newton, Kansas. So Amtrak has expressed support for extending the Heartland Flyer North, known as the Northern Flyer, through Wichita and onto Newton to connect these two major routes.
Right.
So-
I'll just add.
Go
that
ahead.
We reviewed this before, and I know we've switched it. The question was, do we even need to have it on there because it's now, and I did confirm with KDOT that they would appreciate if we kept it on, but they also sent some updated information. So this is not the same as the first time. First time tried to have some cost quotes in there that were they were outdated. So there's small changes in the bullets, and yes, they wanted to keep it on there. So that's what. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Then I'll move on to the next one, Dry Creek Overflow Detention Facility in District 3. That is to support funding for the Dry Creek Overflow Detention Project through a federal emergency management agency, FEMA, Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities grant, BRIC grant. The county has submitted a joint application with the city of Wichita for BRIC funding. The Dry Creek Overflow Detention Project came about because of the flooding that occurred in 1998 between November 1st and 2nd in West Wichita. This event is known as the Halloween flood, which caused damage to over 100 homes and businesses. Okay. And then we have added ARPA funding, and I'm going to just mention that there is a typo in there, and I'll mention that as I read this. This is to extend obligation period by 1 year to December 31st, 2025, and the expenditure period by 1 year to December 31st, 2026. And you'll see that it says 2024, so I'm going to make that change to 2026. And then lastly, we have funding for county services. As I mentioned before, this is kind of a catch-all for all local government programs. Commissioner Howell, at the staff meeting, you did have a question as to whether or not these are new programs or continued programs. I did reach out to Jim Davenport. He said these are continued programs and these have been in existence for a long time. So with that is our federal platform, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or if you have anything you need from me on this.
That's a good update and summary, pretty focused. So thank you very much.
Okay, and then with this, I would recommend that you adopt the federal platform, commissioners.
Okay. Without any further ado, I'll make a motion that we accept the federal agenda as presented to us.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions, comments? And Commissioner Lopez, you got to speak up if I forget to ask you.
No questions here, thank you.
Okay. All right. So Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Lopez,
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis,
Aye.
Commissioner Beatty,
Aye.
Commissioner Howe,
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay. Next item, please.
Item E, presentation of the quarterly financial report.
Okay. Good morning, Brent, or afternoon, whatever. Morning.
Good morning, Chairman
East Coast
Meister and
time.
Commissioners. For the record, I'm Brent Shelton, your Deputy Chief Financial Officer. I know that we've got some time sensitivities this morning, so I'm going to really hit some highlights this morning. If any of you'd like a deep dive, I'll be happy to sit down with you and discuss things in more detail. But this represents the financial results of the county as are at the end of 2022 compared with the same time period 1 year prior. So let's just take a quick look at an overview of our net change in fund balance. If you look at this screen, that middle row shows that we have an increase in fund balance across all operating funds of a little over $30 million. Things to note that have contributed to that: in our general fund and our other property tax supported funds, we've seen increased tax revenues. In the non-property tax supported funds, you see almost $29 million increase there in fund balance. That's where the federal stimulus dollars are parked. I'm going to skip through the charts and we'll go to the specific spreadsheet on slide number 7, which will give you some detail to support these items. You'll see that our ad valorem and our sales and use taxes are up in our property tax supported funds. We've continued to trend throughout the year of a little bit of a decline in motor vehicle taxes. Non-business licenses and permits are up as we've seen more projects, and higher interest rates and a cooler real estate market have resulted in a decrease in officers' funds that we see toward the bottom of the chart. Personnel expenditures are the biggest item in our property tax supported funds. The result of the 27th pay period being posted in 2022 resulted in an increase in our salaries and wages, some higher pension rates resulted in that increase in pension contributions, staffing shortages, increase in overtime. Those are the main things that we saw big changes in. Non-personnel expenditures in those same property tax supported funds, we've seen a reduction in grant awards. The end of the zoo, $6 million 3-year grants expired in 2021, so we see that reduction. And then temporary employment services down by about $11 million, a result of reduced COVID-related expenditures for temporary employment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In that line item. Quick look at the fire district, which shows pretty much flat revenue but slight growth. They're kind of a microcosm of the county where we saw increase in property taxes as a result of an increased tax base, but a slight reduction in motor vehicle taxes as a result of the supply chain issues and fewer transactions in motor vehicles. Slide 15, where we talk about the non-property tax funds. This graph just depicts for you CARES funding received in 2020, ARPA funding received in 2021 and 2022.
Now we're back to.
If we removed them, you see much flatter lines, remove those COVID-19 revenues, and expenditures declining from 2020 to 2022 as a result of fewer COVID-related expenditures. If we look at the details, you can kind of see that it supports those same things. One of the things that I would point out to you is that as ComCare has changed their billing and funding model to the CCBHC model, you see an increase of in the PPS1 Medicaid funds. That is, we're moving some money from the booking it instead of in Medicaid fees up in the PPS1 Medicaid fees. That results in about $5.5 million in revenue increase, the big mover in these funds. The next two slides, number 21 and 22, just show the effects of receiving property tax revenues in the first 2 quarters of the year and spending them down in the second or the third and fourth quarters of the year. We continue to maintain fund balances as a percentage of our budgeted expenditures above the policy minimum of 20%. We're seeing some improvement in our investment portfolio as we are able to reinvest funds and take advantage of higher interest rates. I would tell you that we earned a little over $1 million in the fourth quarter of 2022. That compares to about $800,000 for the entire prior year. So we are seeing some uptick as we are able to, as poorer performing investments mature, we're taking advantage of the higher rates. 4 significant capital projects to mention. We have the Bell display at the main courthouse that's just been let. That's in negotiation. The emergency repairs at Sedgwick County Park are underway. The first bridge is about to be completed. They're moving to fishing docks and working on other other repairs for bridges and so forth. They're estimated to complete that next month. R359 is a half mile east of 135th Street west on 95th Street. That's to provide paving for the increased truck traffic as a result of the Plains Cotton Cooperative Association warehouse that was built in the Clearwater Office Park. So we're seeing that facilitate that traffic. And then finally, a bridge repair of 63rd Street South, a bridge over the Arkansas River. It was estimated originally to complete that work in 2025, but some serious deficiencies were uncovered, and so that was moved up. It's estimated now to have about a 15-year useful life. So if I was to leave you with any key points, one is that we maintain healthy balances. The county fiscal condition is sound. We have experienced and expect to continue experiencing continued growth in our tax base. Inflation and interest rates seem to be plateauing a little bit, but they're still high. We're dealing with workforce challenges both organizationally and throughout the community as we take, it's the biggest thing that a prospective company looks at when they're looking at the region. How will you provide us with workforce? And the federal stimulus opportunities that continue to be there for, as you just heard from Tanya, we're looking to take advantage of those. We'll be talking about one, not only for the county, but the Integra is taking advantage of some of those federal stimulus opportunities with the CHIPS Act. So I guess I would tell you at this point that I'm cautiously optimistic about where we are and where we are going. I would be happy to answer any questions, and I would recommend that you receive and file the report.
Brent, thank you, and appreciate that. We've had a busy morning, and you kind of give us a condensed version of your normal presentation if people are watching. But a lot of that was due to the fact that it's the first quarter, and we've got our annual financial statements and audited statements right around the corner. So this is really a quick temperature check for where we're at. I've got one question and one statement. It's a little bit of the elephant in the room, or whatever you want to call it, can of worms. On slide number 7, the sales and use taxes. Are we it is very gray. Could you tell us of that 38 million, how much might be considered food sales tax?
Considered food sales tax?
Right. That's a real, I'm putting you on the spot in a way, but it's really more for, it's just a reality check. It's right around the corner that we're going to all have to address one way or another.
Correct. It will put a significant dent in that figure if proposed changes take place.
Well, I see that motor vehicle taxes are separate, so that's the large ticket item, pretty much.
Right.
So that's not in there. I was hoping that was in there, but it wasn't.
Okay.
My wish list was that was including motor, but it's not. So we don't have to address it, but for us all and for the public to know that there is something going on in Topeka related to sales tax on food, and it might have an impact.
It bears watching, and it's.
Commissioner Howell and I have a wager on how much it's going to be. I'm sure I'm going to win, but that's all right.
Really?
Anyway, okay. And then my last comment was, my only other comment was, I'm on the, occasionally when I'm on the Steve and Ted show on Tuesdays, they ask about the bell. And so now I'm pleased to know that the bell is going to be completed and installed this summer. So I'll report that. So thank you.
Chairman, may I make a comment? Thank you. So again, I see Lindsay came up, but let's just throw out a number. I think it's around $6 million. So out of the $38.19 million for sales and use tax, about $6 million of that would be impacted by the policy being debated in Topeka. And we divide this out amongst two funds. Part of this is for infrastructure, and the other half is for basically property tax reduction. So we're looking at probably altogether about a 1 mil impact. If we continue doing what we're doing today, that would be $500,000 for infrastructure, $500,000 for services, we provide, or we can find a way to cut that $6 million out of the budget. Again, I think that's what Topeka would like to see us do, but that may be very challenging. I think that what we just don't want to shout across the bow to every city and every county across the state of Kansas, but I think about our friends across the street. We're in Wichita, so we say friends across the street. We're talking about Wichita. My simple calculations tells me that they probably would have somewhere between $12 to $14 million hit if this was to pass. And I guess we just need to make sure we know what we're talking about. And as people are debating this policy in Topeka, I hope that they understand the impact that this has on local government. That's my only comment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I don't see any, so thank you, Brent, and I'll make a motion to receive and file.
Second.
Motion and a second to receive and file the quarterly financial report. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis.
Aye.
Commissioner Beatty.
Aye.
Commissioner Howe.
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Aye. Okay, thank you again, Brent, and the staff. Appreciate all the work that the finance and your group does. Next item, please.
Item F, report of the Board of Bids and Contracts, regular meeting on February 23rd, 2023.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Joe Thomas, Purchasing Director. The regular meeting of the Board of Bids and Contracts on February 23rd. We have two items for you this morning. First item is Sedgwick County Adult Detention Facility Electric Service Modifications, Project Services. Recommendation is to accept the low bid from Phillips Southern Electric Company Incorporated in the amount of $519,770. Our final item, Waters Technologies purchase of the liquid chromatograph mass spectrometer for a regional forensic science center. This recommendation is to accept the quote from Waters Technologies Corporation, doing business as Waters Corporation. It's in the amount of $315,066.47. And I would like to note that the funding for this piece of equipment will come out of the county's allocated opioid crisis funds. With that in mind, I'm happy to try to answer any questions you may have, and I recommend approval.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you for the hard work and our commission's efforts to on the forensic science purchase. That's going to have a opioid related and a fentanyl related benefit for our community.
Yes, sir.
As we battle. So I don't see any other questions. I'll make a motion to approve the bids and contracts regular meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second. Don't see any other comments. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis.
Aye.
Commissioner Beatty.
Aye.
Commissioner Howe.
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
You bet. Thanks, Joe, for all your work. Next item, please.
Consent agenda.
Tom?
Good morning, Chairman and Commission. Tom Stolz, County Manager's Office. Recommend consent items G through T this morning.
Okay, there's consent items G through T. Is there any questions or comments? I don't see any. So I'll make a motion to approve consent items G through T as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments? Being none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis.
Aye.
Commissioner Beatty.
Aye.
Commissioner Howe.
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Aye. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Legislative issues.
Is there any legislative issues?
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Tanya Cole, Assistant County Manager. Typically, I'm a little bit brief on this, but I'm going to be a little bit longer today. Not much, but I do have some things to report out. So every week, Watkins Public Strategies gives us a report of how many bills that they're tracking for us. So I thought it was just significant to report out that we are tracking 43 House bills and 22 Senate bills that we're keeping an eye on. So fairly significant there. Last Friday was the turnaround deadline, and so the legislature was off last Friday, Monday, and yesterday, and so they're back today. So we are halfway through the session, but I hear yet still early in the legislative process. So we now have bills that must make it through the other chamber for consideration and negotiation before being sent to the governor's desk, who also has veto power if she doesn't support. which you're well aware of. We do have several items on our legislative platform that are related to appropriation matters. So budget subcommittees have just begun the process of reporting their recommendations to the House Appropriations and Senate Ways and Means Committee. So Watkins Public Strategies, they'll begin reporting out on those results in more detail. So I'll have a lot more details on that every time I come Wednesday to report out. So just wanted to mention that for our legislative platform. So you just spoke about this with Brent, and I do want to bring this to your awareness. Senate Bill 248 was passed by the Senate last Thursday. And so that bill eliminates all state and local sales tax for food and food ingredients effective January 1st of 2024. Lindsay is aware, and I think she wants to come to the podium and speak to that on what impact that will have for us. So I'm going to turn this over to Lindsay.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. Lindsay Poruso, your CFO. So to Tanya's point about this bill, I want to be very clear that the estimates that we are using are very preliminary. It comes from what the fiscal note was that was prepared by the state. They estimate that approximately 15% of total sales tax comes from food and food ingredients, but at this time there is no way to capture that data with any precision. And so while we're giving you our estimate, it's a good faith estimate, but the real impact is actually unknown. It's something that obviously we would keep an exceptionally close eye on, but it would have an impact not just to the county. That $5.7 to $6 million figure that we reference is Sedgwick County government alone. It would also impact all other cities. There are 20 cities in Sedgwick County. We receive approximately 27% based on the most recent distribution formula that's in statute. The state looks at population and mill levy rates, and that is how our distribution is determined. So right now, based on that 27% that comes to us and that 15% estimate that the state put together, that's where those dollars come from. But both of those are obviously variables that can change. So I just wanted you to be aware of that as we're preparing information and sharing it out to the legislature.
Yeah. So the 15% is a fiscal note from the state.
Right.
So that's helpful to know. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman.
Your mic, sir.
Just as a question, do we know whether their strategy is to use state appropriations or whatever to backfill local government for the loss of revenue? I think I've heard that, but I'm not sure where we're at with the bill.
I don't know that I've heard that, Commissioner.
Okay, yeah, I talked to a senator that made the motion to amend that bill to made this, and he was under the impression that they were going to backfill. But I would just take my only comment would be look at LAVTR. I don't know what they really do, what they'll actually do compared to what they promised they'll do. That might be two different things. Thanks.
Okay, and we can certainly ask Jason on that too. Okay, let me move on then. Just a couple of things that I want to report out. House Bill 2082, that's our county fund bill. Just want to mention that passed the House 119 to 5. So just wanted to mention that. House Bill 2021, that's our juvenile justice bill that Commissioner Howell provided testimony on. That passed prior to turnaround 85 to 35. I wanted to report out on this because you all have talked about fentanyl. House Bill 2398. So this is adding the placing of controlled substances into pills into the definition of manufacturer, increasing the criminal penalties for manufacturing fentanyl and creating a special sentencing rule to make sentences for distributing fentanyl presumptive imprisonment past 123 to 0. So I just wanted to mention that bill. Because you all, like I said, have talked about the serious fentanyl issues we have right now. Senate Bill 208, that is also something that we have provided testimony on in opposition. That passed the Senate on an extremely narrow margin of 21 to 19. This is legislation that completely prohibits the use of ballot drop boxes within the state of Kansas. Senate Bill 209, this was adopted by the Senate on a vote of 23 to 17. This legislation essentially eliminates the 3-day grace period for ballots to arrive at the election office. Only ballots arriving prior to 7 p.m. on Election Day would be counted. And the House also passed a companion version of this in House Bill 2056 on a vote of 77 to 45. Senate Bill 6, I mentioned this in an email to you. This passed the Senate on a vote of 22 to 18. This would remove the authority of the county or joint board of health or local health officer to prohibit public gatherings when necessary for the control of infectious or contagious disease. I know that you had a discussion on Senate Bill 252. This is the government competition bill. We provided opposition testimony on this. This would provide a full tax break, both sales and ad valorem tax, for any business that has government competition in the categories of child care center, entertainment, exercise, health club, recreation, and restaurants. So I just wanted to give you an update on those bills. There are a lot more bills that I can give you an update on, and I'll continue to do so via email if I don't have the opportunity every Wednesday to get to you. I also want to mention the week before last, I thought we had a successful luncheon with the South Central delegation and the commissioners who were there. We're able to interact with over 40 legislators, and we're able to present to 20 legislators over their limited lunch hour. They were able to talk about the mental health hospital and about our legislative platform, focusing on several bills that were being worked in the House and Senate. Upcoming dates, I just want to mention and throw out, March 29th is our second turnaround deadline. March 30th and 31st, there is no session. April 6th is the consideration of all bills and first adjournment. And then April 26th, the veto session begins. And then I always want to throw out for the public, if they want to watch and listen to any House and Senate hearings, or just to get information on the Kansas legislature, you can go to kansaslegislature.org. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you need to give me any direction, I'm happy to do so.
Okay, thanks for the summary. It's a fast-moving time of the year, so thank you. I appreciate you staying on top of all this, and thanks to Jason and all the commissioners that are involved in their respective interests of support for us. Okay. We don't need a motion to receive and file. Next item, please.
Committee reports.
Committee reports. Does anybody have anything to report on that? Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually have several things, and they're all good news. First, I want to talk about the zoo. We just had a zoo board meeting yesterday. One of the things we learned, and it's now public knowledge, is that the Chamber has voted to give the Spirit of Wichita Award to the Sedgwick County Zoo. Oh, that's great news. You can only get it once every 20 years, and it was exactly 20 years ago that we had it last time. So the first time we were eligible, we got the award again. So that's fantastic. The zoo takes care of thousands of animals, so one of the things that the zoo is always interested in is making sure that we protect the environment, because we are the caretakers of all those animals, and so we have to protect the environment. So now if you go over to the zoo, you're going to find if you get a cup of soda of any kind, it's going to be an aluminum bottle, not bottle, but a cup, and so it's recyclable. So everything they're trying to do over there is recyclable. Also, the American Zoological Association is going to be down in Oklahoma City here in the near future, and one of the things they do is they take a pre-trip and a post-trip, and so we have invited them up here for their pre-trip so that zoo leadership throughout the nation, that's everybody is under AZA, about somewhere around 80 of them have already RSVP'd, so they're going to be here visiting the zoo. So that's great news, because it really shows what our zoo is doing for the animals. I want to ask the commissioners to think about becoming members of the zoo. There's a big membership campaign going on, and I'll give you one good reason to become a member, is that the people that operate our food services at the zoo are doing a fantastic job, and I learned yesterday that probably the best burger in town is at the bistro. but you can't get there unless you're a member or you pay to get in that day. So if you want to go to lunch and have one of the best burgers in town, the easiest way to do it is become a member of the zoo and then go in and have that. They are having a little difficulty finding veterinarians. We have an opening right now for veterinarians. They are in short supply across the nation, so we are in competition with a lot of people that are trying to get vets. So that's kind of an update from yesterday. A couple other things that I've been involved in recently. Commissioner Meitzner and I are on the For Wichita committee. We just had a meeting last week from For Wichita, and what that is a committee to support KU Medical Center here in the city of Wichita. One of the great things that they briefed us, if you remember just a few months ago, they asked Sedgwick County to participate in an endowment for child psychiatrists. And we agreed to help fund that the first year. It's a 10-year long program. At the time they asked for that, they weren't accredited. They are now accredited, which is great news. The second thing is that when we approved that, the proposal that they put in was to have, start out the first year to have 2 child psychiatrists. It's a 2-year-long program. The second year, there'd be 4 in. At the end of the second year, the first 2 would graduate and be ready to go. And then they'd keep bringing on 2, and there'd be 4 for then on. Well, part of the accreditation and the request was, let's double that, and let's put 4 in starting the first year. And the second year, we would have 8, and we keep moving forward from there. So actually, we're going to end up with double the number of child psychiatrists, and each one of those child psychiatrists can take care of about 500 children here in our state. So good news from there. In addition, Dr. Menz came in and briefed a little bit more on the WSU KU Biomedical Center, and that has got full support of both KU and Dr. Menz and Dr. Muma. So again, that's transformational, and I'm certainly in hopes that we can keep moving forward. The final thing I'd like to talk about briefly is that Kansas has a brand new director of the KBI, Tony Mativi, which was a great choice. He was in town here a week or so ago, and so we invited him to dinner one night. And we had County Manager Stoltz in the dinner. We had the district attorney. The sheriff was on vacation, so he wasn't able to attend. And in addition, we had Dr. Shelley Stedman from the Forensic Science Center, and that's really what I wanted to talk to him about. Across the state of Kansas, there's 105 counties, and 103 counties get, by paying taxes into the state of Kansas, they get their forensic science paid for by the state of Kansas. They take care of it. 2 counties, the forensic science is paid for, even though we're still paying, and that's Sedgwick and Johnson County, we're still paying into the state for the 103 counties that are getting it for free, but we're also paying for our own forensic science center, to the tune of a little more than $5 million a year for forensic science, 41 employees over there last time I saw. In addition, we've got a $7 million CIP project that we're moving forward with. So it costs Sedgwick County a lot of money to provide forensic science. So I was kind of trying to lobby him to say, hey, can we get a little bit more funding out of the state of Kansas in order to be able to support our forensic science, because we're supporting not only Sedgwick County, but some of the surrounding counties are getting services too. What I learned that I didn't know, but probably should have, is that he has to submit his budget for 2024 during this legislative session because the legislature approves it. So at this point, asking for any money for 2023 is out of the question, beyond what we may get some grants someplace here and there. But it puts us in mind that make sure that as Tanya and everyone else starts working our legislative agenda for 2024, that we need to start early and let the KBI know that there's a need here in Sedgwick County to see if we can get some additional funding out of the state for our Forensic Science Center. So those, I'm sorry I had a lot of things going on, but just in the last couple of weeks, a lot of things have been happening, so I wanted to bring everyone up to speed. Thank you. Oh, before I go, I'm sorry. During the dinner with Tony Mativi, one of the things that we're really having a crisis on is fentanyl. And what we learned is down on the, here in Sedgwick County, almost all the pills that you're going to get are manufactured in somebody's garage, and they're going to have some fentanyl in them. And just a very small portion of the fentanyl will kill you. And it costs $8, $10 per pill. On the border, they're costing 35 cents today for one pill. They are intercepting, coming into Sedgwick County, thousands and thousands, not thousands, I should say hundreds of thousands of pills are coming in today into Sedgwick County that have fentanyl in them. It's causing both the city of Wichita, because I went to the Crime Commission, Commissioner Meitzner and I attended Crime Commission meeting this past week, and the police chief, Joe Sullivan, was the speaker, and he's having the same problem on, he mentioned, I think, 3 times that he needs a chemist. Well, what he means is that he needs our Forensic Science Center to help him out a little bit more with testing. And it brings up the issue of people that are impaired when they're driving. With alcohol, you blow something, and it's quick, 0.08 or above, why you have a DUI. With marijuana, which they're thinking about legalizing in the state of Kansas, and with fentanyl and all the other drugs, it's impossible without some kind of a blood test or a urine test in order to be able to identify whether that person was impaired at the time. So we're going to have to work with the state or someone to try and figure out what steps do we have to take to be able to identify whether someone's impaired. So these are all challenges that we're going to face here and we're facing today, and the fentanyl crisis is getting worse each and every day, so we need to keep that forefront of our minds. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the updates. Commissioner Lopez?
Thank you. Just really quick, I want to mention that Death by Chocolate at Exploration Place is this weekend. It's their largest fundraiser of the year. So there's still a handful of tickets if anybody wants to go. It's Saturday night, 6:30 to 10, I believe. And the theme is going to the Oscars. So if you want to dress up all fancy, that would be a good opportunity to do so. Also, their summer camps are already selling out. So if you have kids that want to go to Exploration Place summer camps, you want to sign up really quick because they're amazing camps. My son loves them, but they sell out very fast. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Do your new girls like chocolate yet?
Well, they're probably going to get some through me.
Okay.
So yes.
That's a pretty good answer. Commissioner Howell.
Just a thank you, Chairman. Just a clarifying question for Commissioner Dennis, and I'm really glad you had the conversation with the people at the KBI. That was a really great thing to do. My experience is that the state is debating right now, today and this week and this month, the 2024 fiscal year, which starts July 1 of 2023. So this is the time to make that effort. And maybe I misunderstood. But to the extent he's talking about 2024 fiscal year, that's just a few months from today when that would happen. Of course, the feds are October through September. We are January through December, but the state is July 1 through June 30th, and that's when they start their 2024 fiscal year. So good job, but I think we should double down. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I don't see any other comments. Okay, we'll move it to the next item. Other, does anybody have anything other than what we've just spoke to and other? I don't see any. Next item.
Executive session.
Yeah, okay, we will recess. We need to recess right now and from the commission meeting and go to the governing body of the Fire District Number 1. So, Madam Clerk, we will call that to order. Madam Clerk, first item.
Roll call. Commissioner Lopez. Present. Commissioner Dennis.
Present.
Commissioner Beatty.
Present.
Commissioner Howe.
Present.
Chairman Meitzner.
Present. And next item, please.
Public agenda.
Didn't receive any information. Is anybody here want to speak to the commission regarding Fire District? I don't see any, so we will close public agenda. Next item, please.
Consent agenda.
Manager Stoltz.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tom Stoltz, County Manager's Office. Recommend approval of consent items A through D on the fire agenda.
Okay. We've received copies of those items, and is there any questions? I don't see any, so I'll make a motion to approve consent items A through D on the, as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis.
Aye.
Commissioner Beatty.
Aye.
Commissioner Howe.
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item, please.
Executive session.
Well, I think we don't have any other.
Oh, yeah, other, sorry.
And so we will we will adjourn the fire district meeting and we'll return back to the Board of County Commission meeting. Next item, please. Executive session.
Executive session.
Commissioner Howell?
Commissioner, do we still need 40 minutes for this? Okay. Thank you, Chairman. I move that the Board of County Commissioners recess into executive session for 40 minutes until 12:51 for the consultation with an attorney for the board on matters deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship involving contract negotiations on behalf of the county. That the Board of County Commissioners returns to this room from executive session at 12:51 p.m.
A second. There's a motion and a second for executive session. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Lopez. Commissioner Dennis.
Aye.
Commissioner Beatty.
Aye.
Commissioner Howe.
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Aye. So we will be vacating this room. Are we going upstairs? Okay, we'll go up to 6th floor and then we'll return in 40 minutes. Thank you, everybody.
Set timer for 35 minutes.
I think after Death by Chocolate, my girls are.
Have a timer to make sure we come back down.
Okay.
All right. And we're back from executive session. Let me announce that no action was taken. And so we're basically into the meeting. Does anybody have anything else to come before the commission before we adjourn? All right, seeing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.